Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream. Today is April the 4th, Wednesday. Starting earlier today, I don't know what went with my sleep schedule, but apparently now I'm kind of back to the 10 in the morning stream times being a good time to stream. So I'll stick with that instead of potentially waking up at 9 in the morning, sitting around pre-recording footage and then being tired again probably around 2 or 4 in the afternoon, which probably would be the better point to stream. And yeah, I still very much am in those split sleep schedules where I'm sleeping for like 4 to maybe 6 hours, and then I wake up for a few hours, and then I sleep for another 4 to 6 hours, then I wake up for a few hours, and it never really turns into a good quality like 8 hours of sleep or God forbid anymore. And it just kind of interrupts trying to live any kind of normal life at all, as often is the case with insomnia. Okay, Swordcraft and Havencraft, and Shadowcraft and Havencraft for the daily quest today. And I want to do a pick 6. So I want to open one pack and then call it. For the accountability section, there is something that I've been watching other YouTubers or Twitch streamers that make pinball content, and boy is it more difficult than it would seem to get a camera to look at a real pinball table. The Twitch streamer in particular that I've been watching, he has like 4 cameras and none of them get a good angle of the table. There's like a face cam, there's a chat cam, there's a hand cam to show his hand movements and him hitting the buttons and flippers, because you kind of need that, although you kind of don't. And then there's a table cam, but the table cam does not really look great. The trick I've seen with some other streamers, as far as to film a table, you basically have to take off the top glass. There's no way you're going to be able to get away from the glare of lights, and you need to light the table quite a bit. So you have to take off the top glass and play the game with the glass on above the pinball field missing. And then there are several other elements that come into play, whether you need a backboard LCD camera, or in more modern tables you can actually just plug in an HDMI splitter basically and try and get the footage from that to get the backboard LCD. But that's yet another camera that's taking up the screen, so it's just like a horrible experience. And at least because Pinball Arcade is emulating it, they can fix that a little bit, and you can see a much better experience. But once again, how can you recommend Pinball Arcade when they've lost the licenses to most of their tables, and it's an incredibly buggy game that hasn't been improved upon over the years, and there's a limited selection of new things in particular, since they've practically given up. Alright, open 6. Okay. So then the question comes down to, do we want Polocraft or do we want Forestcraft? I don't think I want Bladecraft. Let's go with Polocraft. That means all the cards we're going to get are going to be Polocraft centric, I believe, or neutral cards. And none of the cards we get are going to be particularly special. But they all in the sense that your odds of getting a legendary, I think, are the same. So you may get some legendaries in these pack openings, or you may not. And then there's one legendary pack that's full of legendary cards that will come back to potentially help you. Some of these cards definitely are not from the newest expansion, so they gave you the load animation for the newest expansion, but then they kind of hand you only 2 packs of the first expansion and then 1 pack of each other expansion that's in rotation. And here's the legendary cards. Alright. Now here comes the big work. Certainly, as far as building a deck. And odds are low that I'll have any new cards at all added to my collection. But also, maybe none of these will say new until later. Okay. So we have 48 cards in the deck. And so this will just come, we just need to, I think, eliminate down to 40, don't we? This could give things a rush. This is probably not necessary. Definitely want this. This is fairly late game heavy, though. 3 copies of the leftmost cards. We probably could get rid of that. Puppets. Couple puppets. Let's think about getting rid of the puppet themed. Let's get rid of card draws. Puppet themed. Puppet themed. Get rid of randomness, I guess. Get rid of discarding cards. Alright. So that got me down to 39. Which I think maybe duplicating cards might be our best bet. Unless we want to... Unless we wanted to instead just have a puppet at like 3. Nope, I'm gonna stick with this. And hope that that is good enough. Yeah, so I've been watching a lot of pinball YouTube to see what tables really aren't covered. I saw a collection of like 650 pinballs in one of the pinball museums in California. Not all of them original, like some of them were duplicates, but there was at least 50 different variants. And yeah, there's not a huge gap as far as the quality curation that Pinball Arcade has. Pinball Arcade has about 100, I would say, 100, maybe 150 tables, if you could have purchased them all. So I own about 150, and that's about it. Tracing the past. Let's see. So there's not big missing things. The biggest licenses they don't have is the Super Mario Brothers pinball and maybe the Playboy pinball table. Kind of makes sense. But that's kind of it. There's a lot of old wooden tables that are historically relevant but not really going to be that interesting that you'd want to play them. So yeah. I did realize eventually, I saw in that collection there was this sign on top of some of the pinballs that said color DMD, and I'm like, what is color DMD? I know that's not an original sign. And so I looked it up, and it's color dot matrix display, this like aftermarket add-on that allows you to replace the dot matrix display on a on a pinball, because pretty much every pinball table has just a red dot matrix display. It's just a grid of red dots. It's not color. It's not neopixels, which would be much more modern technology. It's not LCD screens or OLED screens where you would let's see, what do I want to do here? I think I want to do this. I'm gonna hit that, and then hit that, and then hit that, and then end the turn. So what the color dot matrix display does is it replaces it with the red dots with color dots, but that isn't the ending of it. If it was just that simple and there was color information in the video images that were being sent by each individual pinball table, then this would have been a not an aftermarket modification. It would have been something that anybody could have done for just like an upgrade price. What they have to do after that is kind of ingenious, and I can only assume it works this way. They didn't actually explain it, but they must be running a very fast delay on what signals are being sent to it, as far as the dot matrix display, so that they can run a pattern matching algorithm of it, so that the display itself is this extra circuit board that knows what animation is playing. And remember, a lot of these animations are not just static. When it shows a video saying multi-ball, yeah, that's static. Multi-ball is not going to change. But when it says you've scored a jackpot, and that jackpot can be any amount between 1 million and 125 million, that's not something that can be changed. So they have to do partial pattern matching to see where it says the word jackpot, but not where it says the numbers. Also, whenever it shows a score, that obviously is going to be different. Let's go and do that. And then hit that, and hit that, I suppose. So it has to be doing some kind of pattern matching. Then it has to look up in a ROM chip a lookup table of what pattern it's matched. Then it has to load a new custom programmed ROM chip to say, okay, we're going to display this pixel, but in this instance the pixel is going to be green, whereas in a different instance the pixel may be red, or a different instance the pixel may be blue or yellow or orange or any other color. And it has to do that just super, super fast, which is kind of insane you could even accomplish that. On top of which, the color DMD is not really a dot matrix display. It's actually an LCD screen that has options to make it look like a dot matrix display and add scan lines and add rounded dots instead of pixels that would blend together. Square pixels. And so it's an interesting upgrade. Now, the most modern tables, and I'm talking about tables that came out in the last 4 years, do have LCD screens, so there's no reason for this aftermarket upgrade, nor do I think having an aftermarket upgrade would be viable or even doable. Yeah, the Stranger Things pinball table shows actual video from Stranger Things, so that's not something that you could upgrade and really change too much for. And then, in all honesty, it's probably just HDMI in that case. So if you were going to upgrade the screen to a high resolution, it probably wouldn't change anything. The video is probably at a 720p resolution, and it's just going to always be that way. One of the Guns N' Roses table, which I think there's an older Guns N' Roses table. The newest one shows footage of Guns N' Roses playing, so that too would be kind of a pointless table to upgrade with a color DMD effect. That being said, that's really, it really is a great product. It is very specific though. Like when you first get the color DMD screen and replace it, it doesn't even have the color code loaded, and you have to load a custom firmware for each game. So they only really support about 50 games, but they are the right 50 games, certainly. But I don't know if you really want to do that aftermarket change, and I'm not sure it really matters as much as you think, because when you're actually playing the pinball and you're not just a passive observer on the side, on the background, you're never looking at the LCD screen anyways, except for when there's a video mode. And the tables I've played, there's about 5 tables between 1992 and about 95 when pinball crashed and pretty much died. So yeah, so far I've seen about 5 with a video mode. Not that much that really matters. For the accountability section, as far as the actual games I've played, World Championship Soccer is still about the best table I've played. There's been a long run of real-world sports-themed tables that seem to all have been released at the same time, or within the span of a few years. But like one table is a baseball themed table called Big Hurt. Apparently there was a baseball player with the nickname Big Hurt. It was around him. It's boring, frankly, because I don't know who Big Hurt is. It's a bad table. It's got a very wide jump where you can jump straight up the center for a home run, to the left for a left curve, to the right for a right ramp curve. If you don't make the jump, the ball just kind of drains either to the left or right into some boring sinkholes or pop-up bumpers that are boring. There's a mechanical glove that moves back and forth constantly, and I really think it should have been programmed to move to the left or right when like each slingshot is hit, instead of constantly moving. But yeah, that's that's pretty much all there really is to say about the table. You collect baseball cards for that one character. The most important thing about Big Hurt, I think, is of all the previous tables, this is the first table to have an African American looking person displayed. It's all been mostly white guys or eye candy blonde women, and anytime any table has tried to reach out to a specific community in pinball, it has always been country western, country western community, not a African American community in any ways. I think it's fairly obvious that there's a level of nostalgia amongst the table designers, and so things coming out in 1993 or 94 were nostalgic for things like Twilight Zone that came out in the 60s and Star Trek The Next Generation, which that actually probably was around 93 or 94 that was coming out. So that was more of a licensed tie-in. But yeah, it has been shocking how many different country themed tables have existed. You have like a table like Red and Ted's Road Trip that literally has nothing to do with country western music, and yet they hire a country western singer to be the voice and make a big deal about promoting the fact that they hired her to be the voice. And she may be one of the first instances of a real voice actor being hired for the voices in pinball. And so that might have been a reason why that was a highlighted, curated game. Otherwise, I have no idea why that game was curated. Can I do anything to summon a dutiful steed? Let's see. If I play this, I'll get a dutiful steed, so I think that's pretty much all
you can still eat, right?
what you should do.
Knowledge without application.
But yeah, Big Hurt's angles are terrible, and there's kind of just nothing to do on it. There was another table that was called Attack from Mars, which is a decent table. The shots are a lot nicer than some of the other tables I've been playing lately, but it has this problem where you shoot up the center lane to attack a UFO flying saucer, and there's like 5 attack modes in which you do that, and after that you're locked out of doing any more attack modes for the rest of the game. So it reduces the amount of shots you can make, leaving you with being only able to do several other things, and a lot of tables have these late game conditions where you have to hit shots a lot, and they are shots where the angles are not really that good, and so it's really hard to do it. Like going up a right ramp in a lot of games can be fairly difficult, and if you're not capable or good at doing that, then you're going to end up failing pretty miserably, or just getting stuck in a point where you can't do anything more. And that is true also for another table I played, Indy 500, which is the Indianapolis 500.
So this is my fate after all.
So, like, in Indianapolis 500, there's 2 ramps you have to shoot, a loop around, a left loop and a left and a right loop, and then a center lane shot, and then there is a cross shot from a upper right flipper, and the cross shot from the upper right flipper is so emphasized that if you can't get that, you're not going to accomplish anything on Indy 500. It is thematically as a table around the idea of winning the Indy 500. So, like, one of the wizard goals on the table is to get into first position. To get in the first position, you start at 25th position. You have to hit the left loop 25 times. That's a ridiculously high number. So, yeah, that's really hard. To get a super jackpot, you have to do the cross shot with 3 balls in relatively short amount of seconds, like 12 seconds, 15 seconds. Let's see. Can I accomplish anything here? Storm. Right. Rush Drain. Bane Ward. I guess I could have evolved that. So yeah, Indianapolis 500, not that interesting either. And so yeah, I think that's the only 3 tables I played. So I bet I didn't even get 4 tables done between Monday and today. I may get more done later today. I also have scheduling that still needs to happen. Some of the second Halloween footage on my channel has started to air, which that is nice. I think I may have actually fixed my network woes a little bit too. I noticed looking out the window that there was a wire kind of sticking out of the ground, half buried. And I'm wondering if at some point my internet service provider just straight up decided to install a whole new wire when I wasn't looking, and that was part of the problem. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Friday rolls around, Saturday or Sunday rolls around, and the network goes down again. But also I reduced the number of channels on my 5 gigahertz connection from a super wide 80 channels to 40 channels, and that might have fixed the problem with my cell phone just losing connectivity. Maybe. Or maybe I've just been lucky so far. But yeah, I would like to be done with that issue. Certainly, LG just came out with a new cell phone, and it'd be nice to not have to buy a new cell phone. There's this Lego free gift that came out today, and it apparently sold out in less than 5 minutes, and Lego's IT department as far as their website is terrible. And so now scalpers are trying to sell this thing that would have been worth about $16 for like $200 or $300 on eBay. Which, when things like that happen, the only proper response is to just gracefully bow out and say, well, I didn't care about it that much. I'm dropping the ball on the Circuit Playground Express. I haven't worked on that project, so by the time I get back to it, at this point, I'll have to start over from scratch as far as what I was thinking about and what was in my mind, but that's fine, because that's not a terrible idea in some projects, is to take a week or 2 off of it. And that way you can start over with fresh ideas. I also am kind of just waiting for a patch that probably is never going to happen, because nobody has even commented on the issue I submitted, and it's been a week. So yeah, seems like make code by Adafruit is pretty much abandoned. They're not going to add anything new to it, Which at a certain point I can't blame them, but they probably should just pull the trigger and say, hey, we're just not gonna support make code at all. And I think that is kind of true. Like, I don't think any of their newer hardware devices even begin to pretend like they do support make code, drag and drop, any kind of drag and drop visual programming language, and it starts with MicroPython and CircuitPython as that being the simplest, and then C++ being the more efficient, more complicated version of embedded programming.
The uncharted desert awaits.
There is weirdness in general just around the idea of having embedded devices and that being a teaching tool for new programmers in the first place, because embedded devices are almost certainly the most complicated thing you're ever going to program.
Oh, so it's a fight you want. Someone call tech support. Special delivery.
That being said, the Raspberry Pi Pico chip, I think it's the RPI 2040, may get MakeCode support, and clearly the Raspberry Pi Pico chip is the way forward for small, simplistic, embedded devices, because it's relatively cheap as far as the chip goes, and it's much faster than a lot of the other chips. Although for some designs, 48 megahertz versus 100 plus megahertz may not be a jump you need. Anyways, let's start going through the video game news. Otherwise, this is going to end up being a really long stream. Apparently, there's a Nintendo Indie World presentation. Oh, I think it's Nintendo.
There never was a mystery.
Indie World Showcase for the Nintendo Switch, yeah. So, we'll probably talk about that at the end of the stream once it's already happened, unless I end up ending the stream before it's finished or anything's been announced.
100% string and 0% fluff.
Okay. So you do this,
A spin and a twirl and out.
and then you hit that, and then what? I guess you leave it. So we might as well play one to make room. I think some of the footage that I set up as a premiere also aired. So the idea of a premiere, yeah, there definitely was one video that premiered on my channel where I set up as a premiere, and I clicked on it to see if anybody was watching while it was premiered, and no one was watching. Like, pretty much all my pre-recorded footage and most small-time content creators pre-recorded footage. So yeah, the premiere didn't magically get me 5 views in the first 5 minutes, but it's a system that has its advantages. It teases what's coming. It lets people who are interested know where to tune in. So it's not something I think I would just abandon. It doesn't feel like it floods notifications particularly that bad, and I'm just never going to really be that good at scheduling that I'm gonna schedule 5 different premieres in the same day to a point that would irritate people.
You will atone for wasting my time.
Okay. How can we save this?
Coming at
I
you.
guess we evolve here. And then we hit that. And then we hit that. And that saves it from Bane. Interesting. So, yeah. There was a Slick Deal sale from a third-party website that was selling Fallout New Vegas Ultimate Edition, and it activated on Steam, but I just didn't feel like putting in my credit card info into a untrusted website. It was like $5.30. I do know I want to buy Fallout New Vegas in Ultimate Edition and play it at some point. Yeah. But I also have Fallout 4 without the DLC that was gifted to me, and I haven't played that, so that would be kind of a slap in the face to play that. Fallout New Vegas first. If anything, the right way for me to do it would be to play Fallout 4 and then play Fallout New Vegas and compare the most modern Bethesda made one versus the non-Bethesda made one that came out before then, even though I think Fallout 3 actually came out after New Vegas also, so it's still not a direct connection or direct timeline. Either do that or play Fallout 1 and Fallout 2 and work my way upwards towards Fallout 4.
Perhaps you're who I've been waiting for.
Alright. Lose 1 play point. Do I want to do that? What does this do? Let's do that.
This is where I truly shine.
Okay. Those that originally cost 5 play points need to be played to activate this, which we'll see about that, I suppose.
Foul forces of darkness, bow before my tempest.
All they would have to do is figure out a way to defeat me by doing 6 damage. That's really not that hard.
Wind, grant them courage.
Okay. Do we want that? Go ahead and do that.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Do that.
Damage to unit confirmed.
Do that. And what do we want to do here? Think, evolve.
Now the fight begins.
I'll add this to my shine. So that's
Get
how
rid of
you
that.
use it.
Blow on, dear wind.
So moving on with news, TechRaptor has the DreadX collection, the Hunt giveaway, which I guess they're doing giveaways now on TechRaptor, which seems weird. We apparently have a harvest festival, the Indian Harvest Festival, between April 14th and 22nd, which is weird because we've gone fairly radio silent as far as Steam doing sales. So that's very interesting. This game is called Forgotten Fields, which is Says it's an interactive fiction. It kind of looks like a point-and-click adventure more than anything. $11.04. I'm going to put it on the follow list. And then let's figure out what this Indian Harvest Festival is all about. Well, I thought I clicked on that. And I did, and it opened a new tab. That's because that's how I set that up, isn't it? So I guess the easiest way to pull that off would be to do that, wouldn't it?
Check it out. Fully automated arms.
Sweet. I don't know if that was really what I wanted to do, but okay. Just see how this works. Let's not play that. Apparently, though, artifacts destroyed still seem to be at 0.
Check it out. Fully automated arms.
So, it may take out this guy and
Begin. Reach out and make the world a happier place. This invention could be my claim to fame.
okay. Do that.
Check it out. Fully automated arms.
And that. And then hit that one. And I
Extend.
guess hit that one. End the turn. So here we have the Indian Harvest Festival, which apparently is called Baisakhi, Bihu, Vishu, Poila, Boishak, Puthandu, and Ugadi, which that seems like a lot of different names for the same season. But also maybe these are not names for the same thing, and maybe that's just some kind of phrase. So, also very well may just be an indication of how many different languages there are. Well, this would be 8-8. Can I get it up higher? I think you do this. I think you do this. I think you evolve here. And you hit that.
You crusty horseshoe.
And you hit that.
You crusty horseshoe.
So as long as he can't do 2 more damage, which almost certainly he could do 2 more damage with all these cards.
This is great.
Yep. Definitely found the way to win. I thought I might be in a good position for 3 wins to potentially get to keep one of the legendary cards in the pick 6, but that was unlikely to happen. And that it does definitely explain why you wouldn't want to play pick 6 until you're really, really good at Shadowverse, and I'm not sure I'm ever going to get that good. if I got a quick disconnect now and the next game, then I would have 3 victories, and that would let me keep 1. I think of the legendaries. I think you need 4 or 5 victories to keep both of the legendaries. But I haven't done this in so long I don't even remember. So we have like Super Lovely Planet and Warfront Defenders. If these are all Indian developers, I think what I've felt is that there haven't been too many Indian games that felt like they were targeted to an Indian audience or built from Indian culture. Maybe they are targeted to an Indian audience, and Indians just who play video games don't want to play games like Raj, which are based around Indian culture and have like Shiva in it. Maybe they just want regular games. That's certainly the case here, because, but with the exception of Raj, that's the only game that I would even think for a second would be built by a company. There's a lot of coming soon here for maybe some more games, but what are you really supposed to do during a sale when something is said is to be coming soon? So this is an interesting limited it's an interesting like limited sale to maybe just work your way back in Valve employees back into the idea of having sales and warm up to the summer sale, which can't be that far away. It's a category, I will say, to use. It's not the best category to use for a sale, but the summer sale and the fall sale are also around American Western holidays. So, like, there's clearly a Christmas sale that happens every year at Steam. There's clearly a Thanksgiving sale that happens around Thanksgiving. There's not really an Easter sale so much, so it's not getting deeply religious. But the summer sale is clearly a spring break event, which is effectively a Western holiday. So those are reasons to have sales, clearly. Like almost any reason is a reason to have sale. Arguably, I would say they probably should have a sale around Holi, the Festival of Colors event, because then you could just sell a bunch of colorful games, which there's plenty of those to select from, instead of having a specific tighter limitation, because trying to be somewhat Indian around your games is a very tight limitation. But yeah, Steam's getting back to sales, which means we can expect a summer sale to actually happen. It would be nice to expect a lot of the workers to start doing some more work at Valve. Do I want to wait, or do I want to just go ahead and play this?
Anyone call for a super sleuth?
Let's see. Gamatsu has last stop adding a Switch version and launching in July. This is a single-player third-person adventure set in London. No video here. I do think there's a Steam link, so let's check that out. Yeah, I don't recognize this game. So if I've seen a teaser for it, it seems like I've completely forgotten about it. Or this is the first time I've seen it. It does kind of feel like it's a half Life is Strange type game. Seems like there's some weirdness going on, and a art style that I'll call unique instead of just kind of low polygon, slightly low polygon. 3 characters whose lives collide in a supernatural crisis.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
Alright. Go ahead and evolve this. And
Find your clues, find
smack
your
this.
So it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
in there. So I guess I'll put Last Stop on the follow list. We'll keep an eye on it. And that's one of those games where it's really going to come down to the reception and the story, because if there's very little gameplay, or if the story's boring or terribly written, it can be awful, kind of like Life is Strange. Or if it has a really good gameplay mechanic, like the first episode of Life is Strange, it can be fairly appealing. But that is kind of the if.
So there never was a mystery?
Alright. Barrier artifact. Or rush this. Well, this might work. So I can hit that, and that should bane it. Nice. TechRaptor has an opinion piece: how Animal Crossing ushered in the age of endless games. I have to question that. Like, I think we will see in a year or so, depending on how the pandemic goes, a lot of people just getting completely bored with Animal Crossing. And I think we'll see a back-end boredom with Animal Crossing, the next Animal Crossing that comes out. I could be totally wrong about this. But I don't think it is going to simply just go on forever.
You will atone for wasting my time.
Just go ahead and evolve this and use it to attack that.
Now I feel like crying.
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article here. Starbreeze has penned a licensing deal with PopReach to relaunch Payday Crime War, which Starbreeze seems to be constantly making deals and having trouble with deals and going around in circles trying to have a scenario where their games are on sale and working well. They've gone back and forth with the monetization, I think, in some of the paydays, and seems like there at one point was a fandom around the Payday series, but now not so much. So yeah, I don't know if I could ever play Payday. So we looked at this game, Pixel Art Coloring Book, which looked interesting. Unfortunately, it's 66% positive with 21 reviews already. And when I scroll down here and look why, we have the engine is very real unresponsive, the UI is a mess, the color palettes disappear sometimes, pressing the arrows to scroll through the drawing is so fast it won't stop in where you actually want to, the art is not good, The actual pixel maps seem AI generated without any curation. Then you have another one. I got the full version DLC for free by SteamDB. I don't know what they mean by SteamDB because they don't sell anything. When the install thing, they didn't patch. They removed it from their account. So this guy got suckered and he is upset about that. And let's see. That was activated by a key. I don't think he means SteamDB. I think he means some other site. Alright, well, did the rights. We can do that, or we can do this. Or we can do this. So let's do this. And then do this. Hit that. Hit that. And end the turn. And I think that's about the best we can do. And so yeah, that sucks because I really thought these coloring book programs might be decent. But clearly there's an example there of a lack of quality as far as caring about what you're making. I clicked on a lot of tabs that were of games we already had talked about too. So now I'm trying to close those. Yeah, I was not mentally awake enough, as it were, to remember what I'd seen and what I hadn't.
You're who I've been waiting for.
Here we have a game on Steam, Detective Riddles Sherlock Heritage 2, which is just a pictogram game for $2.99. English, French, German, and Russian. Doesn't look good enough for a follow. Okay. Hope this is right. I hope this is right. Let's see. Next, we have gas lamp cases, The Deadly Machine, which looks like it's just a match 3 game for $5.39. English, French, and German. Seems to have some story around the puzzles. Let's see. Here we have Endless Furry Ping Pong, which I feel like I've seen several Endless Furry games from the same developer in the past couple days. Yeah, Endless Furry Ping Pong, Endless Furry Asteroid, Endless Furry Blackjack. Like, clearly this is another garbage publisher and developer that doesn't deserve to be on Steam. Tech Raptor has an article here, a Cozy Grove review. Cozy Grove was, I believe, a hidden object kind of 3D game where you wander around collecting things for different people, sort of like Toe Jam and Earl. They give it an 8.0. Cozy Grove is a life sim game that takes a few pages from Animal Crossing while encouraging you to take some time to log off from the game. While the controls are finicky at best, it still provides for a comfortable experience. The pros. Let's see. 3 damage all enemies. I think that might be our best bet. We could do this. We could do this. This would be 13 damage. Not yet on that. Rush, drain. Restrain. Hit that.
Extendo.
Hit that. Hit that.
That was resplendent. If I were.
Thy little canary.
In the turn. The pros for Cozy Grove are hand-drawn art style with adorable characters, great for short bursts of gaming, and an overall relaxing experiences. The cons are controls are clunky and it can't be customized, and there's not much of a gameplay loop. Okay, well that sounds doable. So I guess the real question is, can I get to Cozy Grove on Steam? Since they didn't mention the listing. It's on Epic Games. Here it is on Steam. Wow, like 4th or 5th link. So yeah, this meets the requirements. It's 77% positive. It has over 30 reviews. So I can put this on the wish list. Is this something that I would jump to the front of the list to play? Not particularly, but I wouldn't mind it either if I did jump it to the first of the list. Alright. 14. Now, this one has oh, I hope this works. That didn't quite do what I was hoping for it to do.
To die or not to die.
I didn't understand what was going to happen there.
Extendo.
So I may lose again due to my misunderstanding of how the card worked.
Feel my fury. Rage empowers
They
me.
needed to be able to do 3 extra damage, and they did. I thought that this was going to end up doing 14 damage and have Storm, and for some reason it didn't. Oh, shouldn't have clicked home, should have gone back to the arena. Resume playing this. Next we have a game on Steam here called Fantasy Dungeon, which looks like it's just a roguelike clone. Nothing special in the graphics. $1.79 English only. One last opportunity to get a second victory. TechRaptor has this article, a game and learn how to program with Oh My Git. Now I've tried to use Git once and not not really ever needed to use it, because Git is for collaborative version tracking of source code. So collaboratively develop source code, and I've just never collaboratively developed source code. So I kind of could do it, but playing a game like this probably would also be very helpful as far as figuring out what the different functions are, because really all I did was follow instructions. It is free on itch.io and GitHub, so it's not on Steam, and it's certainly not something I think you want to immediately learn if you're learning programming either, because the truth is, in education, you're not going to collaboratively work until you're probably at a 2nd or 3rd year programming class in college, and probably not even then. And that might be a mistake. Certainly, it might be a case that you should teach collaborative working and working with Git in general. Git is also a British insult, which is kind of a issue, but not really. It's the equivalent, I think, of just idiot. And looking at this seems to be card-based gameplay. So this really feels like one of those educational games that's harder to justify. Do I want to do anything at all? This is kind of like the best thing I can do. Just hit that. Then if he wants to attack that, that's fine. If he doesn't, fine. But yeah, first things first, as far as learning programming, you have to learn programming, not version control. And honestly, you have to learn documentation way before you need to learn version control, because if you don't document any of your code, but you have 100 different versions, that's useless information too. So yeah, there's a decent amount of things that you would need to learn before you get to version control. I have to speculate more than speak with authority, but I think even in work environments where you would be in a DevOps team in IT in a company where you're actually developing software, I feel like a lot of times even then you're kind of just working on your own code and there's just no collaboration. IT people are just generally not good at working with other people, even other IT people, that much. Video game development is about the most collaborative instance I think most people would have. But if you're like working at Microsoft and working on Windows, even there's just big separations between teams, even if you're all working on the same operating system, and big separations even between who's doing what on a specific bit of software.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
All right. Will this give me a play point when I evolve? I don't think it will. Nope. So I hit that. And then hit that. Next we have a game on Steam called Alchemist Memory, which is just memory with flowers and fruits and things. For $4.79, English only. That's too expensive. Here we have United Assault Normandy 44, which this looks like a new game, but this also could just be an asset flip first-person shooter. Not really seeing a lot of enemies. You're not seeing a lot of variety in these screenshots. That guy just flopped over and didn't have any animation at all. This may be an example of a beginning of asset flips for first-person shooters, looking almost as good as asset flips for horror games. But yeah, you can definitely see in some of these animations that there's just like no physics on the bundle of dynamite being thrown. This is $9.99 English only. And I don't know this publisher or this developer. Beyond Enemy Lines is mixed. No, not enough reviews. Yeah, so everything from Polygon Art as a publisher is awful. Which, yeah, that looks like that might be the case. Let's see. TechRaptor has an article here. The Capcom ransomware attack was partially caused by the COVID-19 work changes. They ended their investigation, and basically they said there was an old virtual private networking device that allowed them to connect to both the US subsidiary and the Japanese office. And once they got into their offices, they could then exfiltrate and take data. At least that's what they're claiming. The idea that one would have a virtual private network device is to say that they bought some solution, almost certainly, instead of just setting up a VPN on their own servers. Or they had set up VPN on their own servers and they did it so poorly that that was the outcome. Let's see. Do this.
100% string and 0% fluff.
And do this.
I'll get production up and running.
And then evolve this. And then do this.
A spin and a twirl and out. There's our
Didn't
puppy.
do that.
Watch as
So
I
we can
wind
hit
and
that.
wind.
And that. And that.
Best of luck to you.
And then hit that. Let's see. Gamma Sutra has an article. Epic nets $1 billion in funding, including $200 million investment from Sony. So Epic Games is getting money to either because they're fighting Apple, or because they're fighting Steam, or just because more likely I have to suspect it's the people in charge of Sony now are just straight up in bed and colluding with Epic Games, when really they should be competitors. Like, it makes no sense that they would want to do business with Epic. Okay, well, I guess we hit that. And I guess we hit that. And I guess we just attack with that and end the turn. See, we have a game on Steam here called Monsters Seek Episode 1, which looks like it might be, they're calling it a 2D platformer. I'm not seeing how it could be much of a platformer if you've got this big fat scientist looking guy walking around. Yeah, I'm not seeing any jumping or platforming happening here. I'm seeing an incredibly slow person doing puzzles, so it's mistagged. Yeah, I just don't think there's enough game here. $1.99 English Russian. This just looks like a low effort Russian monster money laundering scam. Let's see, we have 9, so if we did this,
Let the stakeout begin.
we can do
So
that.
it's a fight you want. Anyone call for a super sleuth?
was a mystery.
We can do that.
I get the gist of it. I'm so useless.
Don't think I'm gonna win here. He needs to do 2 more damage, and that's it. So, just one evolve will win for him. Man, Shadowverse is still way too brutal. Here we have a game on Steam called Liar's Village, and I'm seeing all this flickering of light that I think is supposed to be light coming through the window of a car, but it also just looks like terrible animation. strategic and realistic role-playing game up to 12 players. Feels like it is player versus player style game with just some asset flips. 14.19 English and French. I don't see anything of interest there. TechRaptor has an article here. Be a social media star in YouTuber's Life 2 coming in 2021. I don't recall YouTuber's Life 1 having these kind of, well, they're a little bit chibi, a little bit moe style animation in that they're not anatomically correct in their height characters. I feel like YouTuber's Life 1 was closer to this and closer trying to represent real people. Also don't feel like YouTuber's Life 1 was particularly anything. Here we are. I guess I was slightly wrong on the animation. It is a little bit like this. This is basically The Sims, but in a fantasy world where everybody's a YouTuber and everyone's a successful YouTuber. And I'm kind of glad that I feel like the idea that everybody can be a successful YouTuber is dying away and not being promoted as much, because there was definitely some crazy mentality there. Unfortunately, the truth is just a lot of people in the next generation, and even a lot of people in this current generation, are not going to be successful in life, and they're going to be lucky to have a job at all. And the idea of establishing your worth by being employed and very monetarily rewarded by that is something that needs to just die away. Theoretically, everybody could be a YouTuber, and they could measure their successes in just how well they feel they are doing, which is a great way to measure your success for anything. But we need things like universal basic income before something like that can really take off. Alright, well, I played the run, and I got to keep everything except for the legendaries there. Now I need to get Swordcraft, Havencraft. I guess we're playing Havencraft. First, though, we need to come over here and see what extra cards we got for doing the pick 6. So, it gave us 1 extra gold, 10 extra silver, and 24 extra bronze, which gives us some vials. But if I was to try to look for new cards that have been added, like the only thing you really could do is probably scroll through the new expansion, and that would be the likely only place where you would get 1 new card. You could limit yourself to rotation on any set, and then you would have 59 pages to look for cards that might be labeled new and might not be labeled new, because maybe none of the cards I got were even new and they were just second copies of cards. Or maybe because of the way I did the pick 6, they won't be labeled new anyways because I liquefied all the extras. I don't know when the new indicator disappears, but it clearly does. What I'm seeing here is a fairly large collection of cards that have animated versions of everything, which I suppose you could turn that off. Or I could put this in create mode and see with the new expansions what we're missing that way. But I think that would also be a hassle. Because if I go into create mode and then rotation mode. And then, yeah, there's kind of no advanced option here to say show me only the ones I'm missing. So then that would be just like 63 pages of syncing through this and going, where's the black and white card that I might be missing? And if I am missing one in rotation, here's one. It's almost certainly going to be something like this, where if I was to start to craft these kinds of cards, they're going to run out of vials very quickly anyways to even have one. 3,500 needed for that legendary. So yeah, there's no work that can be done there. Alright, multiplayer, rotation, because I think rotation is still where I should play. Haven tournament is really what I should play. I should play this quite a bit. Meanwhile, Gamasutra has an article here. Total World Developer Creative Assembly has opened a third UK studio. Which, okay. That doesn't mean a lot to me, though. We have a game on Steam here called Little Drift. I just haven't played Total War and aren't interested in it. This kind of looks like nothing. It's kind of like a mobile phone racing game. It's polished nicely, but its frame rate seems pretty bad. I feel like a lot of cell phone games that get ported probably are designed in such a way that they only had to target 30 frames per second, and the second you have higher resolutions at higher frames per second, that falls apart. That game is $15.19, which is way too expensive. Here we have a game on Steam called Hired Ops. I did hear on Giant Bomb, I'm still listening to them for some reason. They really don't say anything for a 2-hour podcast. Honestly, I'd like to see Giant Bomb curate itself down to an hour, but I'm one to talk. This game is not well received as an online PvP. English, Russian, and Chinese. You can already see it's 60% positive only. But yeah. I did hear on Giant Bomb a Muslim rights activist group has come out and made a statement saying that 6 Days in Fallujah should be banned, and they've directly addressed and sent their message to Microsoft, Nintendo, and Sony. Although I'm not sure 6 Days in Fallujah was coming out to Nintendo, but Microsoft, Sony, and Steam, I'm sure they were ones I know they contacted. Which that is just opening Pandora's box in general, because if any organization for any reason can convince a publishing company to start censoring it, it opens the floodgates for so many other people to demand the same. You really just cannot do that and survive as a business. You would be setting yourself up completely for failure. It would be not super surprising if that did. It wouldn't be completely surprising if Sony actually did decide to not publish 6 Days of Fallujah, and then that did lead to the last bit of anybody ever wanting to play a Sony PlayStation game. Because let's face it, there is a growing instance of self-sabotage that seems to happen amongst the California offices now in charge of Sony. In my opinion, they're self-sabotaging. I don't know anything about 6 Days in Fallujah, but I can easily evaluate this idea one way or the other. You could say that 6 Days in Fallujah is completely callous and rude and obnoxious, and it just highlights the torture slash genocide slash murder of Muslims. I don't know if specifically I agree with the idea of just grouping all Muslims together, because that's something that constantly happens, in the same way that Christians are all grouped together, and like somebody talking out against Catholicism isn't particularly talking out against Roman Catholicism or Protestantism, or the many branches of Protestantism, like a Southern Baptist church doing something awful and abusive and talking about that is not attacking all of Christianity. People constantly try to use religion as a shield to any criticism whatsoever. So, to get back to the thought, if 6 Days in Fallujah is totally callous, totally insulting, totally highlighting and aggrandizing the killing of Muslims, it's like, well, at a certain point, it's a fictional story based on real events, or it's a historical documentary on what really happened. It seems like it's kind of closer to a historical documentary of what really happened, with only slight exaggeration or fictionalization. Or, on the other hand, if 6 Days in Fallujah is completely accurate and completely respectful there, and still it gets censored, well, that's not acceptable either. I will also say, it's when talking about Islam in general, the thing to always highlight, and it always tries to get buried by pro groups, are pro-Islam groups, and this is also true for pro-Judaism groups and pro-Christian groups and every religion like this. They really try to highlight the fact that the biggest class or group of people that are victims of a religion are members of that religion. Like, people forced in Islamic Sharia law countries to follow the law, people getting their hands chopped off because they steal things, people getting stoned to death, people being forced to wear hijabs, being forced to live their entire life never drinking alcohol, not because they chose not to, but because the law forbids it. They are the biggest victims, and this is true in Amish communities, where children are forced to grow up and be Amish, even with the Rumspringa. There's a massive amount of force. It's true in Protestant Christian communities. It's true in Catholicism communities. It's true in Jewish communities. It's true in every single religion I have ever seen, that the biggest victim of a religion is its members by far. Now, you can get into the weeds, certainly, if you want to make a religious argument to say, regardless of how often people spout that Islam is a religion of peace, there are direct commandments that are taken literally to cut off the head of non-believers, and there are practical translations of what is said and proclamated in Islam that are implemented as violent things. There's considerably fewer real Christian theocracies out there that have people killing other people in the name of the religion, with kind of the exception, I'd say, of Israel, which isn't a Christian but a Jewish country, and there are African countries certainly that claim to be Christian to maintain power, that use that as an excuse for violence too. But yeah, there are issues. So even having this conversation goes into the weeds, and it's not very much usually a video game conversation to have, but it is a conversation I think more people should have. But this is also the kind of conversation that I've found incredibly annoying when listening to other podcasters try to have these conversations and have usually uneducated, boneheaded thoughts that often are just screaming with SJW nonsense. And that's certainly the case with Giant Bomb, is that they danced on eggshells to agree with this Muslim rights group and their call for censorship, when anybody who's pro video games can't be pro censorship. You just can't. You have to draw a line in the sand. Either you're pro fiction and all fiction is allowed when appropriately given to the right audience. I'm not saying give offensive material to little kids or anything. There's an age restriction is about as far as I'm willing to go as far as pro censorship, and even at that I will call pro censorship. But anything above that in my book, and you're just not pro video games, and there's no excuse and there's no way around it. You've got to maintain that hardline stance, or you will start going down the slippery slope. And the slippery slope argument is not a fallacy. Last time I checked, like it is a real thing that really does happen. And the pendulum swings. So if you go pro censorship on video games one day because they're depicting real world things, then the next day will be pro censorship because they're depicting they're not depicting real world things. This is what happened with the most recent Far Cry game too, is that it got slammed and poorly reviewed, not because it was particularly a poor game, but because it did not do what all the SJW video game reviewers wanted, which is to slam middle American members of a cult and make them look like slack-jawed idiots and make fun of them. Instead, it showed them as actually being powerful and formidable as enemies, when they wanted them to just be a Trump allegory, and they wanted the whole game to be just anti-Trump for 60 plus hours. So yeah, I definitely hope nothing happens from that. That would definitely suck. 6 Days in Fallujah is definitely trying to sell on part on controversy. The bigger issue certainly is the events that happened in Fallujah are real world events. So if you're going to do anything, get yourself right and highlight and complain about the events in that actually occurred, and the things that the actual U.S. military did, and the atrocities that may or may have not happened there. If you take the whole Fallujah aspect out of this, this could have been a game that literally just accurately depicts you playing the role of like a Nazi guard at a concentration camp. Maybe someone who's not even that well informed as to what's going on there. It would be ridiculous to claim that a video game shouldn't be allowed to depict the events that would have happened at like Auschwitz, and instead of just saying, oh yeah, these events happened and they were bad, and everybody should know about these events, and it should be talked about more. This is another example of trying to bury the past and bearing the past does not lead to a better experience or anybody learning anything or any kind of personal growth. Guess I have to just play this. Anyways, that was a long rant. Here we have a game on Steam called Normandy, The Spear of Shaquin, which looks like it is a South American RTS. Which there might be something interesting here around that, because that is definitely a different type of real-time strategy or RPG game. They're calling it an RPG game. Which, when you take the general concept of a role-playing game, far too many of them have you playing the same kind of character over and over again. This is English $12.99. I'll put it on the follow list. Even when you're doing like a sci-fi JRPG type game, it far too often it's just, okay, you're gonna have magic, you're gonna have a healer, a tank, a attacker, a mage. It's gonna be the same thing over. Final Fantasy is kind of bad about that, where that you're gonna run into basically the same kind of enemies and the same chocobos. But yeah, usually when you are in a fantasy world, it's not a very different culture. Almost every JRPG fantasy game is basically just a Japanese culture where they eat about the same food, and they maybe have public bathhouses and saunas, and they might bow, and they all talk the same way and think the same way. It's hard to create a new culture completely from scratch, certainly. So that's not super surprising. I think Ni no Kuni might be an example of a pretty decent different world. But yeah. It never gets really that weird. I think Oddworld might be an example of a slightly different world. But if you replaced all the Oddworld characters with human-looking characters, it probably wouldn't be that different either. So, yeah. It's always nice to see somebody try something different. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Till Nord, which is a jet ski game. It looks like it's from a student project. Early access for free. Is this a student project or not? And is this a game worth playing even if it is a student project? It's being made part of the 2020-2021 IGDA's Yield 3 project special thanks to our teachers, peers, and lecturers that made this game possible. It kind of feels like the teachers and lecturers might have had a hand in the development instead of just the students, which I don't feel comfortable particularly around that idea. But yeah, I guess I'll put this on the follow list, but I could see myself not being super interested. It is really just an asset flip walking simulator where you're using a jet ski or whatever these are called. Maybe those aren't called jet skis. Instead, a snowmobile. Yeah, snowmobile, I think maybe is what those are called.
Stop!
Yeah, it's called a snowmobile. Not jet ski. Jet skis are the ones that are on water, but they're effectively the same thing. TechRaptor has an article here. Roblox Monopoly has been revealed and is open for pre-orders. This is barely video game related, but it does kind of highlight that Roblox is either still popular or it was popular enough to get Hasbro to make a custom Monopoly board. I would almost argue that maybe Roblox was just popular enough to get a Monopoly board, and now they may very well regret that, because they may find that there's not going to be much of a fandom that actually wants to buy it. Let's see, Gamma Sutra has a feature here. The writer of BioWare's Dragon Age 2, David Geider, speaks. This is from 2011, so they retweeted a feature that's old. You would think in the middle of the pandemic there would be a whole bunch of really well done interviews. It would be so easy to just send emails to people and they would have more free time to respond to those interview requests and those reviews. But it seems to me like that is totally not what is happening. It seems like video game journalists, more than anything, just took the pandemic as an excuse to be even lazier and do less, because they only really saw themselves as playing new games, and if there are no new games out, then they can just rest on their laurels. And I think that's not specific to video game journalists. I think a lot of people, instead of taking pandemic and working from home as a challenge to do things different or learn new things, instead took it as an excuse to accomplish nothing. Now, how much of that has to do with the fact that a lot of them had kids at home, and the kids at home created a remote learning nightmare, might be a consideration too. So, yeah. There might be some understandable excuses as to why they didn't adapt and grow, but honestly, I just think humans in general are nowhere as adaptable and as they think they are. And they get stuck in their ways, particularly as they get older.
My blade is your salvation. Punish the wicked.
Whereas I'm kind of feeling like I very well may, as I get older, just constantly become more ADHD and jump around and do different things, and potentially have large shifts of interest. Hopefully not large shifts of mood and ways of acting, but I wouldn't be surprised of that happening too. Yeah, the old saying is the only thing that's consistent is change. Speaking of change, I was thinking about updating and trying to use some free VST audio plugins to change the way my voice sounded, adding a de-esser and a big bottom effect, which is something that I've wanted to do. I've just not gotten around to doing it up until this point. But doing that certainly would be weird if one day all of a sudden my recordings sound completely different and I sound more like I'm on the radio, but probably wouldn't hurt. The sneaky little trick is that everybody on the radio doesn't actually sound the way they sound in real life, and for better or worse, that's become the established norm. Moving on, Gematsu has this article. Little Witch in the Woods is going to launch as an early access title, which looks like it might be something of interest. There's a Steam page here. Let's check it out.
I shall give birth to a new world.
They're calling it a relaxing fantasy drama game. It seems like it might be a little bit of Stardew Valley without the farming element, which honestly, if you got rid of the farming element in Stardew Valley, I might be willing to play it a little bit more. Early access to be announced, English and Korean. All prematurely put down on the fall list. Okay. So, here's what we're trying to do.
The world
Hit that.
The world cycles
And
on.
then hit this.
Not a soul without sin.
And then evolve this.
Winds of light, show your might.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
And then what else do we want to do? Do this.
Smiles are the best medicine.
And then in return.
Feel free to call on me again.
Yeah, this should work. I think I actually can win here.
Today
If
we'll
I'm
lift
lucky
some
enough.
heavy scriptures. You're in good hands.
Harder, faster, holier.
See, the crazy thing about Shadowverse seems to be that they match your deck to other people's deck. So by me playing this tournament deck,
Put your legs into
I'm all of a sudden playing other people with the tournament deck.
By your
At
will,
least that's what that feels like is going on. Maybe it's not really what's going on.
there is not a soul without sin.
Evolve this again.
I will save you no matter the cost.
Punish the wicked. Let judgment fall.
Okay. What does this do? This.
The zenith. For there, I will rise.
No, no.
This effect is not stackable, so we don't need to play that a second time.
What is this not the end?
And still got wrecked. I would have won probably in a turn or two, which is true for so many games. Let's see. Next, we have a game on Steam called Survivors Vivi, or Vi, V-I-Y, The Last, which doesn't really feel like English, and we've got like a lot of dark screenshot syndrome here. Seems like it's a horror game running around in the dark with maybe a radio.
Dazzling victory awaits.
I assure you the
Which
pleasure
that could be a
is mine.
game, and that could be creepy, or it could just be an acid flip game where you're running around in the dark. And it honestly looks like it's an asset flip game where you're running around in the dark. Let's see, legendary sequel to indie horror. Early access 839, third party EULA. Let's see what this other, like I don't see another game even called Survivors Vi. V-I-Y. Yeah, I don't think there's a real game that precedes this, and even if it is, it's not something I recognize. So no to that. Next we have a game on Steam here called Train Station, which is tagged as a puzzle exploration game. Seems like you're interacting with and talking to Ghost. Feels like it might be a Russian game, but I can't immediately call the Russian low effort game. It's free to play, English only, so that's weird too. It was made roughly in 3 days for the Global Game Jam in 2021. The theme was Lost in Fans, so it's a Game Jam game. Well, I really don't have any desire to play Game Jam games. Like, because what a Game Jam to me just means is that, oh, you didn't put a lot of effort into it. I'd be willing to play a Game Jam game that you spent 3 days to make a vertical slice of, and then you spent 6 months to 2 years polishing to make into an actual game. That's fine. That's the idea, theoretically, behind the idea of a game jam, but it's something that just never actually happens. People who make game jams spend the weekend making those games, and then they abandon the projects completely. In all likelihood, a significant amount of people who made these games could never actually make a proper game that was of any real value in the first place, and they really had no business at being at the game jam. And actual game developers who could actually make a decent vertical slice in 24 hours and use that as an idea to make a real video game probably are forbidden from doing that because of copyright issues, and are too busy to actually attend the game jams in the first place. And I think the best example of that is probably American McGee of the Alice and American McGee's Alice and Alice Madness Returns. He runs his business out of China and does the Pirate Jam and runs it, but as an actual programmer, he's not up to snuff and couldn't really do any programming. And any ideas that he would create would then probably be very difficult for him to sell. Frankly, even the game he's famous for, the Alice series, is pretty difficult for him to sell. And he's just been incapable of really accomplishing much more than live streaming and becoming a streamer on YouTube and Twitch, playing his old games and selling merchandising that he has the merchandising rights to. Whereas I would much prefer to see American McGee disappear from the map for a couple years and come back and say, we have a fully programmed game for the new Alice trilogy, or the Oz trilogy, or the Oz series of books that he's now working on because he can't get the licenses for the Alice games. So he's making Wizard of Oz themed games instead. But I still don't have a lot of faith that that will actually go through. I imagine he is a person that spends a lot of times negotiating in boardrooms and just never succeeding at getting the other side to agree to things, which a lot of that's not his fault, but some of it definitely is. Who's D. La Philly? There's so many characters that either you can't get anymore or only the Japanese Shadowverse players could get. This looks like a really interesting character. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Poker Squadrons, which seems to be half military card-based game and half just solitaire card-based game, where you're trying to line up, I guess, the same cards of the same color or the same cards of the same number to make squadrons and put them in different orders. There might be something here. $3.99, English only. I mean, this isn't the best graphics ever by any means, but there might be a thought here. I'll put this on the follow list and see if people review it well. I suspect the answer to that will be no, just because I bet nobody will review it at all. Let's see, it's going to play that. And then hit that. And then end the turn. Let's see. Gamatsu has Shuin no Verche Era Salvation launching October 7th in Japan as a visual novel. So we might start to see more notifications. Reportedly, a Nier Automata Steam upgrade patch is in development, which is really, really late for that. They kind of promised that years ago and then never delivered. And the upgrade patch is probably just going to fix issues and not really upgrade anything else. Apparently the Microsoft Store and Xbox Game Pass version came out later and did fix several issues. So, yeah. This is an example of Square Enix not really supporting their products on PC and Nier Automata developers just not having the budget to support their products or to support their products on PC. It's kind of crazy that it even succeeded far enough to have Nier Automata come out on Steam. But we should never just rest on our laurels and be and be happy with what we're given, particularly when there is noticeable and obvious bugs that that would demand fixing. I wouldn't be upset if Nier Automata never got like a 4K or 8K upgrade, but it would be nice if it got that too. Nier Replicant version whatever has some free costumes and weapons DLC called DLC 4 Yorha, which, okay, these look like skins from other Nier Automata games. Which, that's nice. Yeah, it's very questionable though whether Square Enix would ever truly decide to support the Nier series as much as they support the Final Fantasy series, as it seems like it's more likely they would just focus completely and only on the Final Fantasy series. Guess we'll end the turn there. Let's see. Valkyrian Arc Hero School Story 2 has been announced for PC. This is from P-Cube, which we haven't heard anything from P-Cube in a while, that I recall. Of course, I can't remember if P-Cube is actually good at making games or not, or if they just make little chibi CG characters that are a little low polygon. This looks a little low polygon. Alright, well, I wouldn't really hold my breath for that game. A single-player adventure strategy game called Gourd has been announced for PC, coming out in 2022. Starting to get more and more announcements for games that they actually think are going to come out in 2022. I think there's a lot of premature assumptions that everything will be back to normal in 2022. I wouldn't be surprised if we're 3-4 years down the line. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lost decade even of just depending on how lucky people get and how many people can get vaccinated and how well the vaccine works. Gourd looks interesting as a kind of Skyrim-esque fantasy game. So do that. Store that.
And that concludes today's sermon.
Go ahead and kill that. And then let's not play that. Here we have a game on Steam called Demon Skin, which looks like it might be several different platforming things. Hack and slash platformer from the looks of it. Looks like there might be a game in there. It looks a little too zoomed out and there's a lot going on in the background, which is not something you can really complain about, that there's too much art, really. the idea of being trapped or wearing demon skin is not a concept that has been used a lot, with the exception of the movie Clown. So that's something video games I think could do. This definitely looks like a challenging platforming hack and slash game. Might be fairly boring though if you're just always running to the right and killing things. $13.49 English and Russian languages for audio. I'm gonna put this on the follow list. It definitely looks polished enough that it deserves a chance. Okay. Hit that. And then do I want to evolve that? That's probably an extra unnecessary move.
Today we'll lift some heavy scriptures.
Do that. Hit that. Oh, you know what? If I had evolved a little bit more, I probably could have won in that turn. Here we have Newton's Life at Home, a pixel art jigsaw puzzle game, which looks pretty much like every other jigsaw puzzle game. It's $1.19 English only, nothing special enough there.
And that concludes today's sermon.
Let's see. Tech Raptor has an article here. Forager developer responds to multiplayer cancellation. If you want to read this article. In general, I kind of don't care. I don't think enough people cared about Forager in the first place. And that's the problem. Is there anything I could possibly do to increase my damage?
A bear a day keeps the doctor away.
There is not a soul without sin.
I will
I
save
think that's about the best I can do. And that's the last of my evolve.
Spare the innocent.
Let's see. CD Projekt CEO says Cyberpunk 2077 will successfully sell for years to come once it's fixed. I think that's extremely hopeful, but successfully sell is very subjective also, so it's not insane to say yes, it will successfully sell because it's selling 100 units every year or even 1 unit a month. But yeah, in the same way that I imagine there are plenty of people that still will buy Fallout 3 or Skyrim. Skyrim successfully sold even though it was never truly fixed for years.
By your will, O Lord.
Right, well.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Okay.
Thus
So we
the
hit
world
this,
ends.
and that's going to do 4 damage. Can we do anything to... Then move forward more? Yeah, that one's gonna die at the end of the turn.
The world cycles on.
Let's see. Gamma Sutra has a job listing for Infinity Ward as a lead tools tester. The Unity MetaHuman function also is now in beta, so you could test that out. The Unity MetaHuman element was a automation tool to create very realistic, hyper-realistic humans and AIs. So I think we will probably see 4 years down the line a lot better just NPC characters that you don't really even care about. They won't look as wonky, as ugly because of the metahuman generation script. But on the other hand, you might end up still not seeing much of a major difference because it may take so much visual elements to display an NPC when it's drawn better that it would slow down the frame rate so much that nobody used it. It's the metahuman engine. I don't know what to really call it. Whether they're called an engine or a script creator or what, also runs into the problem of just potentially not being adapted like Wii's, the Nintendo Wii Mii's, or the Xbox avatars, which I'm not sure PlayStation even had an avatar type idea that it ever tried. But yeah. There's a slight difference between the Mii's and the Xbox avatars, and the fact that those were things that were supposed to be cross-game, when the metahuman concept I don't think is really designed to be cross-game, although it could be. In theory, any model from Unity could be copy and pasted and modded into another Unity game. Moving on, we have a game called Colorize Inspect, which feels like this is a nightmare for colorblind people. Which, yeah, I feel like this would be fairly difficult to tell the difference between this shade of purple and this shade of purple. But also it'd be fairly easy to pull this off too, because the luminosity, the brightness of these colors are the things that are changing, or the hue of the colors are the things that are changing. So even if you are colorblind, if you have a red screen filter and a blue screen filter, you can use that to tell a actually fairly sharp difference between similar hues of colors, and that's what they use when they calibrate TVs often, and that's what the whole deal with the color bars is that you're supposed to actually have a filter in front of your eyes when looking at the color bars when you're collaborating. You're not supposed to just eyeball it. There are parts of the test pattern that you can eyeball, but not all of it. But yeah, that's a dumb game for 69 cents. It's English only. And generally I don't want to just call a game dumb, but that is not much of a concept. Speaking of not much of a concept, we have yet another match 2 game, which this one's so zoomed out you wouldn't barely be able to even see the cards. 69 cents English. I have a whole bunch of Gametsu articles, and I'm not sure if I have Gamasutra or other kinds of articles to balance out with that. Let's see. And turn there. See, Gametsu has a Fortnite character outfit alloy from Horizon Zero Dawn, launches April 15th, which, you know, Fortnite's still doing a lot of cross promotion stuff. Lara Croft too. This is an odd depiction of Lara Croft because clearly this is not the new Lara Croft, but this isn't the old Lara Croft too, so it's kind of like they're experimenting with, can we show off Lara Croft's arms and her cleavage without making her breasts too big, and can we make her waist not crazy skinny, although arguably her waist cinching up here means kind of her hips start about right here, which means at this point you should be halfway to her hips and these pants being off of her. She's just like too tall, and you can see that with the head model too, is that doesn't anatomically make sense. And if you look at Alloy, she's twisted, but her hips are much smaller there. But yeah, this curvature is just like totally wrong. It feels like she's got her pants sagging down far below where her crotch would end, and that's probably not what they intended to draw. Anatomy can be hard, certainly, for people to design. So, but yeah, it feels wonky.
Punish the wicked, let judgment fall.
The miasma pervades all.
Let's see, can I play anything else? Yes, but do I want to? No. But then you also look at our hands are way too big. And see, I would kind of hate to see this to be exactly how a new Lara Croft is drawn. Definitely covering up cleavage because Fortnite's for little kids. But then her hair is a little too long too. Like, if your hair is as low as your hips, let's say her hips are here, that means when she sits down, there's a decent chance that her hair is going to be right up her butt crack on the toilet. Which, yeah, that takes extra work at a certain point to make sure that kind of stuff doesn't happen. So, yeah. And having super long braids is not something that a lot of people can emulate, and not something that really is a great way to depict things. I would expect her to have just I would think Lara Croft would have hair that was just as long as the middle of her back, not the full length of her back. But I'm being fairly nitpicky. Let's see. World Rally Championship 10 has been announced for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is obviously a racing game. Looks interesting, visually speaking. It's nicely polished. Although rally car racing is not particularly the most interesting racing type game to me. Indy 500 as a pinball table did kind of make a lot of sense though, because you are going in circles very often in pinball, so the idea of going in circles like in Indy race did seem to apply fairly well. 2 damage.
I'm already a proper lady, you know.
And we'll have to evolve.
Show your might.
I've got all the magic I need. Is that how you treat a lady? My crumpets.
I'm just waiting till the 10th turn at this rate. Let's see. Subnautica Below Zero has a cinematic trailer, which I assume Subnautica Below Zero is just going to be more icy water on a alien planet in that survival mentality. Although this does seem to imply that you might spend some time actually on the surface of the planet too. It's an interesting thought about whether Subnautica as a game has to always be underwater, or if it could be half underwater and half on land, or it could just be that Subnautica is about crashing on unknown planets and surviving. That that might work too as a concept. Here we have a game on Steam called Necken, N-E-C-K-E-N. What is this? Kind of a pixely permadeath turn-based game by the tags of it. Yeah, I don't think there's something here I'd want to play. Maybe if it was a cell phone game I might give this a chance, but probably not then too. $4.99 English only. Speaking of cell phone games, the adult cell phone game that I've been playing, it seems like I'm approaching a year now. College Days has added new content, but a lot of its new content is also kind of locked behind having the premium kisses or premium currency, which are like lips / kisses. So you have to do the daily quest effectively every day, which they really had only relatively recently introduced the concept of the daily quest. So I don't think that anybody really would have had enough of the premium currency without spending real world money to be able to expand where to the point where it is, to expand enough to get everything unlocked. Plus I cheated and I had like somewhere around 600 to 3,000 premium currency by using a hacked version of the software, and even at that, all my premium currency that I had cheated to get has been whittled away. And from a day-to-day occurrence, it's very much like Simpsons Tapped Out in the sense that it's not really worth playing, and the adult content's very limited, so it's not like amazing adult content. It's 5 sentences and 1 still image. And that's it. Like,
My blade is autumn. I am the fallen leaf.
other games I'm still playing is, of course, Destiny Child, which I'm in a certain the current event was kind of quickly maxed out for me, and I'm moving further and further towards just being done with upgrading everything and entering the next phase of success. I want to do this. I want to do this. Want to do this. So yeah, still playing Destiny Child, still playing Destiny Child Defense War, which that game is getting expansions to make it much like College Days, just have too much that you would really need to collect to have everything upgraded to the max. Even at that though, I'm still somewhat managing to collect everything. I'm spending too much time on Destiny Child Defense War because it's not an automated game like Destiny Child Original, which is the beauty of Destiny Child Original. And then I'm playing a blackjack game that all the blackjack games that I've found suck because they give you free money without resetting your statistics. So if you wanted to have a real simulation of, alright, I'm going to play this game like I actually went to Vegas and I had $100 and I'm going to try to see how much I could win, they obfuscate that and make that impossible to do because they give you free currency all over the place, which is completely inconsistent with reality as far as you may get comped a free drink or a free trip to the buffet in Vegas for playing a lot of blackjack, but you're not going to get your money back or win more money, or just be guaranteed more money. And I have to half wonder if every gambling-like game on storefronts, whether it's the Play Store or iOS Store or Steam, might be in part funded by by a gambling lobby to convince people that they're better at gambling than they actually are.
Dumb beast! I'll burn you alive!
That would be quite the conspiracy, but I wouldn't be surprised. Moving on, here we have a game called Yakuza, as in Yakuza, but a cat. And that's why this cat has a scar over his eye. Seems like it's a platforming game, and he's got like tattoos like the Yakuza would have. It doesn't seem like it's fully polished as a game, though. Looking at the actual video, it just doesn't seem like the whole concept works. And then it's pretty brutal to have a Yakuza cat that is going to use a blade to slice other cats, because whether it's being depicted gorily or not, you are effectively murdering cats in this game. Free to play, English only. Yeah. I think you just wouldn't want to mix cutesy cat ideas with hack and slash Yakuza ideas. That just seems silly. Here we have a game on Steam called Mr. Burnhouse, which seems to be a collection of puzzles and memes from the looks of it. Yeah, and I don't like the idea of potentially pooping on a cake. No. 89 cents, 8 achievements, English only. Think I'm gonna say no to that. I don't think I could ever play one of these meme games. Even if it was free, even if it was really well reviewed, I just don't think that's for me. Next we have a game on Steam called Easter Riddles, which is just a pick-to-cross game themed around Easter. $2.99, bunch of languages. Let's see. Perfect World Games has announced a Persona 5 mobile game called Codename X. So, alright. More promotion and pushing of the Persona series, particularly Persona 5, which makes me wonder if Persona 6 is actively being developed, or if they're just trying to stretch it more and more, or if it's a case that they had real success with the characters from Persona 5 and they don't want to lose those characters, kind of in the same way that Persona 3 I think was fairly popular, and they kind of eventually lost that group of characters as far as being in the mindset of players. Yep. The Nintendo World Indie Showcase was supposed to start a while ago, and so we probably will have something to talk about there. Here we have a game on Steam called Simple Project. These graphics don't look terrible, and honestly we don't have too many games around the idea of gray aliens, but I really do think I'm going to quickly realize that this is just an asset flip garbage game. Notice we haven't seen any VR games today. Yeah. A VR short play of being alien abducted, which can't really recommend anybody doing this in VR, because the thing that could happen here so easily, and clearly they're trying to sell on sex too, so this is probably a troll game or a low effort asset flip game. $7.99. Bunch of languages. The danger here, and this is almost a call for censorship, so I want to be real careful after going on a whole rant about being anti-censorship. The danger here between watching several movies that are around the idea of being alien abducted, I've seen a couple of them, and seeing that in VR, is that if the quality of the game was much better, which it is in this case, so I guess this game specifically is safe from this problem. But the problem would be that somebody would be halfway on the edge towards being a little crazy, and this would push them all the way over the edge and make them think that they were actually abducted by aliens.
Your hypersonic gal is here.
And that's not something you would want to potentially cause. So I guess what I would have to say is this game called Simple Project that is actually called Alien Abduction Experience. If this was better, you would want to make sure before you let somebody play this that they were fairly stable mentally, and you probably wouldn't want to leave them alone while experiencing something like this too. In the same way that I wouldn't really recommend people playing a simulation in VR of somebody being tortured or waterboarded. That feels like they could easily dredge up a lot of emotions in a very wild, violent reaction if you're not careful. There's a big difference from being able to turn to the left and the right and see that you're safe in a room and see the edges of a screen versus VR. Maybe I'm just old and I'm naysaying new technology in part, but yeah, I'd want to be very careful. I personally wouldn't have that problem with horror games, even if they were really good horror games in VR, but I could see the same argument being made for people who are affected by horror movies and horror games, which it does definitely feel like a lot of people are affected by horror movies and horror games more than that should be, in my opinion. I think an average human being might be shocked how many other average human beings are incapable of seeing the difference between fiction and reality in a lot of scenarios, and are greatly affected by horror movies and truly scared to the core by horror movies and horror stories. Moving on, we have a game on Steam called Second Star Prelude, which is probably a demo. Looks like it is a kind of sci-fi exploration game. I guess it's a demo for a game that's not out yet, so if I was going to do anything, I would put this to be announced game on the fall list. But honestly, I think when I'm going to do the fall list cleanup, I'm going to remove anything that's to be announced anyways. So I'm not even going to bother to do that much. A Switch light blue color version launches May 7th in Europe and May 21st in North America and Japan. It's a Switch Lite in blue. So Switch Lite, blue color version should be the title. There's questions, I suppose, as to would you want to get this color in hopes that secretly they fix some Joy-Con drift issues? Or do you think that even the newest Switches are still susceptible to that issue? And I wouldn't be surprised if even the newest Switches are still susceptible to that issue. Gematsu has the Mass Effect Legendary Edition detailing visual improvements, which, here's an original image versus a new image, and you can definitely see new details, new shading, a lot going on as far as how pretty much everything has been redrawn. Here's an original versus more details, more shading, and just different outfit, basically. Of course, the Legendary Edition's new versions are the thing that also caused some controversy, as they made some changes for editorial reasons and censorship type reasons. But when you look at images like this and just how incredibly dark this is versus this, that seems like there's a lot of improvement being made. This is incredibly dull. Now, I don't know if they promise anything like high dynamic range graphics, which frankly at this point, if you're making a remaster, you might as well embrace high dynamic range, HDR graphics, and deeper color depths in general. because that is the next big thing in visuals, more than going to like 8K or 16K. I'm still very much getting kind of embarrassed whenever I shift in my chair because I'm sitting on a cushion that's all squeaky, and so I'll squeak it, and I don't know if my microphone is really picking up any of this while I'm squeaking it intentionally. But it does definitely feel very weird when I hear it. And see, I imagine this trailer comparison is just more visuals video.
You've no idea how pitiful and wretched I feel.
I still feel like it's going to be a hard sell for me to potentially try and play the whole trilogy of Mass Effect as it stands, as it is. What this does highlight in the remaster, more than anything, is that their engine that they are using is capable enough for a remaster that they didn't have to potentially start over from scratch. But then if you think about the actual gameplay on Mass Effect, that's not super surprising. That it was basically just half RPG and half visual novel and half first-person shooter. And I seriously doubt anybody is going to complain about the changes of Mass Effect. I think the bigger complaints is that just there will be apathy in general around the Legendary Edition, and the fact that there's just not really a way to go forward with Mass Effect until they make a new Mass Effect game that actually succeeds and is well received. I need one more victory, which I might actually be able to get today. A 3D roguelike action game called Rogue Spirit has been announced for PC, which feels like it might be an interesting Japanese rogue game, when most rogue games are more Tolkien-esque fantasy games. Apparently you possess people, which makes it questionable how you actually die, and how would you actually have a game that is a rogue-like game. So maybe it's a rogue-lite game. If it truly is a rogue-like, in that when you die you lose all progress and have to start all over again, I can't see myself liking this game. I can also see myself just not liking this game in general, because it feels like it might be fairly redundant Japanese villages that you're wandering around fighting fairly redundant numbers of enemies. And it very possibly is going to be one of those games that is either going to thrive or die based on how much content they actually manage to constantly add to it, like the Binding of Isaac, where Binding of Isaac, had the first version of Binding of Isaac been the only version of Binding of Isaac, it definitely would not still be popular today. Or it wouldn't be any more popular than it was originally. Here we have a game called Shin Harayagami 3, announced for the PS4 and Switch, due out July 29th in Japan. I did hear an interview where somebody blatantly and directly said that the PlayStation was completely dead in Japan, and I feel like that's a little extreme, but it does seem like it's working its way towards that. I would say definitely the PlayStation 5 at the moment is dead in Japan, but to say that the PlayStation 4 is dead is a little bit of an overstatement. Let's see, Komatsu has Ni no Kuni Crossworlds pre-registration is now available for Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. This is a online Ni no Kuni game, which it seems like they're trying to take the Ni no Kuni series and make it more and more things. I could see Crossworlds coming out and blowing games like Genshin Impact out of the water if it manages to simply just not be so grindy or so greedy. But I could also see it being just as greedy and grindy as Genshin Impact. And if that's the case, then I imagine it will succeed as well as Genshin Impact and nothing more. Giant cats might be a big sell. Alright. Just go ahead and hit that.
That's too bad.
But I haven't heard anything about this mobile game, so I didn't.
Witness the fury of my curse.
I don't know if it's even going to come to the West. Here we have a game called Day Repeat Day, which is tagged as an interactive fiction. It looks like it's half puzzle and half text-based game. $6.29 English only. That's way too expensive. Let's see.
There is not a soul without sin.
Let's go and evolve.
My blade is your salvation.
Punish the wicked. Spare the innocent.
This game, Tosomachi Behind the Twilight, is staggering at 62% positive, which is a shame because I kind of liked the looks of it, but it did look like it might be fairly boring. This game is not what I expected. When I first saw the trailers, I thought it would be a Fragile Dreams game kind of atmosphere. You're the only person around and you have to find out what happened while trying to repair your airship and explore a beautiful town of great Japanese settings, to which you repair in the first 5 minutes of the game, by the way. Almost anyway. I thought this game to be completely up my alley. I quickly realized that it isn't. The dungeons are just a couple bridges that you quickly walk over to get to a tree to give you a random lantern, and ta-da, you've done it. The exploring part turned out to be very shallow. You can walk around, though you need a loading screen for every area of the town. But all those things, buildings and other places, are just decorations. Besides picking up money and having an awkward animation to sit on benches, you can barely interact with anything around you. The game is awkwardly silent. Blah blah blah. The main character doesn't blink. Another issue is that the game, despite being set to English, almost always starts in Japanese, and you have to click through everything randomly until I find the language setting. And no, you cannot tell me that this one review here praising the game like crazy is not paid. Alright. So yeah, that doesn't look good for this game. And I tend to believe them. Yeah. Let's see, another review here. It honestly feels like an early access game. Maybe they will add more stuff in the future, but so far it's pretty bland. Some of the music is pretty good though. And then there's some positive reviews, but here you have a positive review. Good for relax. Now games not have much content. That's not in English, obviously, and clearly this is not an English named person, so why are they doing English reviews? Same is true here. Wow, how do you get the animated background on your character profiles? Interesting. I don't know how you do that. And then this guy got it for free and thus was paid for a review. Pretty good, nice and relaxing, a bit floaty with the movements though. Here's another non-English named game. It's an okay game, but the game's best leave in mobile. How do you get these animated backgrounds on reviews? That's got me more interested in than the game itself. Let's see. Gotta kill this. And then play this. And then in the turn, that's about all I can do. So, what's funny is this game is not on the follow list, which I thought I put it on the follow list. So did I take it off the follow list? I'm gonna put it back on the follow list, but it also is a weird, I'm going in circles here, feeling, and if this was tagged as early access, you might give it a chance. Almost feels like there's another game that looks very similar to this that was announced, like they just stole the same art, but I don't think that's the case. 4 damage, that much. Can't evolve that. I could play this, evolve that. Let's do this. And then heal this. And then I guess evolve. Could I possibly heal more? Yeah, I didn't need to evolve that in the long run, did I? Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Shots Fired in the Dark Forest. This is a hideous game that's all in shadow, so I could never play it. Early access, $1.79, bunch of languages. Terrible, terrible title too, just all squished together as one word. Next we have Anime Memory Zero, all squished together too. As if the developers never even heard of the idea of spaces. And these are probably either licensed or stolen anime girls and nothing else. $4.79 English only, that's far too expensive. Okay, if I do this... that saved me for a turn. Let's see, Gematsu has the Famitsu review scores for issue 1689, which we haven't heard these in a while. Balan Wonderland, despite having a lot of controversy, was given 30 out of 40, which is pretty low. Neo Replicant was given 34 out of 40, which is slightly high. Outriders, despite its controversy, wow, everything's got a controversy this week, was 31 out of 40, which isn't particularly high. And Toki Jekai No Apocalypse for the Switch was given 31 out of 40. And then Werewolf The Apocalypse Earthblood was given 28 out of 40, so that was particularly poorly received. Alright, well, if I attack this, that's going to do 4 to kill all those. So then becomes something like this that we want to play.
I will rise.
And maybe not draw cards yet. And I think I want to leave everything else alone, so I'll just end the turn there. Here we have a game called Aspen Uncanny House, which looks like it's a horror game. Doesn't feel particularly polished. Looks asset flippy. $4.99 English Japanese. I do sometimes feel a twinge to go, oh, it has Japanese. Well, let me change my opinion, and I don't do that because obviously that's just me having too much of a Japanophile mentality in me. But there definitely have been cases where I've seen the language and gone, maybe I would want to reevaluate it. But I don't, because I know that would be wrong. And that is an example, I suppose, of where everybody needs to evaluate their sources.
May the gems guide you.
Let's see. Next we have a game called Sky Goddess 2, which is a shoot 'em up game. Doesn't look particularly interesting. It's almost widescreen, $3.59, bunch of languages. Yeah, if you're gonna be this widescreen, I don't know why you wouldn't just make it fully widescreen at that point. That seems like a halfway step. Hit that.
You're a fiery one.
Okay. Is there anything I can do? This. And then this. And then I could restore 3, or I could restore 1, or I could restore 2. So I kind of have to restore 3.
I will save you no matter the cost.
I don't think I win here.
My apologies.
I think you do this. I think it does 4 damage, and I lose. Maybe it would have done 11 or 12 damage extra in the next step, but that would have been it. But I'm not doing terrible today, playing the Haven tournament deck. Unfortunately, that Pig 6 deck didn't really give me any new cards, so I could rebuild a Portal Craft deck, and probably should rebuild a Portal Craft deck, but it's not going to be very helpful. If anything, what I need to do is either play the single player mode content, or find an easy day to do that extra gameplay, or just get the tournament winning decks for other hero classes and try to build something somewhat close to that deck. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam here called Burnt Ashes, which looks like it's a dark screenshot horror walking simulator. I'll look at the video to see if we have anything here of interest. Nope, this looks completely boring for $1.50, English only. And then we have Jumping Tanks, which just by the name and the MS Paint level graphics, we know it's garbage. $4.99 with in-app purchases, English only, online PvP only. So they are going a wide gamut there. as far as terrible business models.
My blade is autumn. I am the fallen leaf. Like a fallen leaf.
We have an E3 Expo 2021 announcement here, in that E3 2021 has joined forces with industry media partners to extend its global reach, which is not a problem as far as E3 being the conglomerate of the ESRB, which is just a lobbyist group that basically promotes video games. I don't have a problem with a lobbyist group at all promoting video games. What I do have a problem with is the fact that there's literally no ethics in video games journalism ever, and they have just picked some winners as far as special access and early access once again for video games, which makes it more difficult for small independent news sources to even exist. I barely even count myself as a small independent video game news source, but yeah, I certainly couldn't get more information or newer information or be the first one to talk about a story when E3 and is going to give special access to all of these websites. And I don't know how you can look at it as anything else besides that. Let's do this, I suppose. And then in the turn there. So, who are these unethical video game sites? Well, it's your pick of the standard people. IGN, Future Games, which is PC Gamers and Games Radar, GameStop, Polygon, which Polygon has had some flaming SJWs and idiotic articles, IGN China, Game Bonfire. I think IGN may have had some SJW terrible reports. PC Gamer, I think, have had some terrible reports. I don't know too much about GameSpot, but there's kind of a reason why I don't follow any of these sources. Like, so they are going to partner with them some way or another. Does that mean that they're going to be sitting in front of a camera and presenting elements for E3 and being the celebrity guest hosts? Or does that mean that their websites are going to be streaming E3 to people that don't go to E3? Or does that mean they're just going to be working in the background? It's kind of the worst group of people to partner with, frankly, if you're going to try and make E3 a event that has to be streaming and is accessible to people, to the average gamer, because IGN and the like don't want it to be accessible to the average gamer. They want E3 to be the special party that gives only information to them that they can then curate and filter and censor and then spout out over the course of a longer time. E3 is effectively going the opposite direction of what every other direct announcement has become. Anytime there's a Nintendo Direct or any other company just directly releasing announcements. And arguably, E3 does not need the help of the likes of IGN or any of those people to give a presentation. There's plenty of people in Las Vegas that know how to run a event and present things. And there's plenty of celebrity people you could get to be the announcers out there. There's plenty of people without work in Las Vegas at the moment that would jump at the chance to memorize a speech and talk about something they may be completely incompetent about, instead of some unqualified IGN person that Like, you could literally just take the porn convention and hire half of the porn actors to present games, and they would do as good of a job, if not better, compared to some random IGN presenter that's supposed to be separate and not have special access. This is literally an instance where, because of these actions by E3, every single one of these sites has to now disclose every single time they write a game. They should, and they're kind of legally required to, whether or not anyone's checking, they should at this point disclose that they were given special access to present E3 anytime they cover any game by those companies at E3, which means they have to disclose it basically in every single game they're ever going to review in the future, because they're being given this once in a lifetime paycheck that may not be real money, but it's certainly something of value, in that you're getting coverage and you're getting presented and you're getting special access to games. That disclosure basically can never end. Whereas a YouTuber getting a free game from, let's say, Square Enix would really only need to disclose that they got the free game on the video that they talk about that game. But
Moonlight drives me mad.
it's a different thing in my mind, certainly. Like, I wouldn't expect a video game critic to have to disclose when they cover the next game published by Square Enix if they didn't get that next game for free. But if you're getting special coverage, once in a lifetime access, you kind of do have to disclose that there's people's careers could be extremely improved by being a presenter at E3 or being involved with it. And that's really mostly just on the surface, because in reality there's plenty of people that work at sites like IGN or Polygon that get connections and get meetings that would never happen otherwise, and they eventually end up working for those video game companies, which is completely unethical too. And yet it happens in politics, it happens in video games, where you end up being a lobbyist after you pass laws to help a company as a politician. Yeah, so yeah, that doesn't strike me as a good way to go, and it does have that whole Gamergate issue brought right back to the forum, as even though nobody uses that phrase, and like, nobody has really addressed the sliminess of working in the video game review company versus the cozy relationship between game publishers and game reviewers. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Retro Machina Nucleoids. This feels like it's a fast-paced, almost like Bastion looking game. It looks a lot like Bastion with robots, and it's a beat-em-up game. It's very visually polished, so I think there really is something here. It's free, which I feel like it's because it's a demo. So instead of playing the demo, I will just put the real game on the follow list. And this is tagged as a puzzle game too. So I imagine the demo is not all of the screenshots. That is something that Steam needs to put its foot down on. Like, it is getting fairly crazy that a lot of demos show screenshots from the game that they're demoing, but they often, obviously, not all the screenshots from the main game are going to be in the demo. And there's needs to be a push to increase and improve the truth in advertising, as far as listings on Steam in a lot of different directions. Yeah, even if they never actually bother to get rid of like the low effort asset flip games or the garbage games on Steam, truth in advertising is still something that should be a goal. Well, this would do 3 damage to everybody, so that really wouldn't work. Think I want to do this.
We'll lift some heavy scriptures.
And then this. And then in the turn, I guess. Gametsu has the Forgotten City launching this summer for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. We've heard a lot about this Steam Skyrim mod that's been turned into a real game. It's taken its sweet time to come out, but I'm hoping that it actually is good because of that. In the Skyrim mod, they've redone it so it isn't so Skyrim-ish. And see, there was this like curse in the city that turned everyone to, I guess, gold now. And you end up finding this lost city and then going back in time, and then you get in this like time loop. And I imagine the Skyrim mod in itself is not going to be directly the same. There's 23 lost souls clinging to life trapped in a secret underground city, is what it says as a description. Okay. Can I do this? Can I do that? No. I think I gotta do this. And then I think what I've got to do at that point is this. And then I think I got to do it at this point is that. May have a successful turnaround there, or may have wrecked it. Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Amazing Fix, which is apparently a renovating the mansion kind of puzzle game. There might be an idea here. Each game is randomly generated. Early access, $9.99. English and French. That's a little too expensive. Although generally I shouldn't concern myself just with price. I have obviously slid into looking at the price more on games. As far as just if somebody's taking the piss and literally asking for the entire moon.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Okay. To defense, draw a card. Got too many draw a card cards. Amazing Fix could also just be nothing as a game. May just be random things.
The time for judgment and redemption.
Or it might very well just be a clicker game.
The world cycles on.
Which, as a casual clicker game, there might be an idea. There's no good reason for it to be an early access game, though. Let's see. The TikTok owner ByteDance has acquired the Chinese studio behind Red Alert Online, which, yeah, Chinese businesses are increasingly making strides towards being bigger and bigger businesses.
Who will pardon your sins?
Store some more health.
Keeps the doctor away.
go. Path of Exile has its ultimate or ultimatum patch notes
I will rise.
out, which, okay. Don't play Path of Exile, so I don't understand a lot of it. Although, at some point,
The moonlight.
I might want to learn Path of Exile,
Embrace them in your fiery
but
gaze,
also is it
solar
not
wind.
available on Steam? It looks like it
I
might not
will
be,
rise again.
because it looks like they want you to play it online on their site.
I shall give birth to a new world.
Guess I'm not gonna
Okay.
reach the moon.
3 hours in and we still have a lot to do, so in what is going to be kind of a crazy thing here,
So long as there is light.
I have no reason to continue to play ranked other than just moving up the battle pass, which I kind of can't care about because I've gotten all the daily missions. The daily missions start again in an hour, so had I waited an hour before streaming, that would have meant something. So then that puts me in this weird position where I kind of just need to rush through the news and call it a day. And since I'm not going to be able to do that, I'm going to just take an opportunity to come over here and we'll try to get the single players cleared. This is probably only going to be 3 or 4 games, and since we'll skip the story completely, we won't know what's going on. Discard deck. See if that really works. Otherwise, we'll have to use a pre-built deck. Open Critic has an article here. New details from Final Fantasy VII Remake's Yuffie DLC has been revealed, if you're interested in that. I wish Open Critic had a little bit more news to put out if it wants to be a news site. Otherwise, I kind of wish it wasn't bothering to tell any news at all and just stayed a Metacritic equivalent for video games. Here we have a Returnal Hostiles trailer. See, this game Returnal, I'm not sure if it was this game, but there was a game. No, it wasn't Returnal. It was a different game that looked so empty that people thought it was an ARG for the next Hideo Kojima game. Yeah, Returnal's the one where you're going through the mind of someone and you kind of get trapped in there, and then you're fighting all these monsters inside the subconscious of the person. But I'm not sure that there's really anything to the game Returnal other than it might just be a generic first-person shooter. Next we have a game called Nibiru, which says multiplayer Nibiru. And so I'm assuming this is a player versus player first-person shooter. Does seem to have some slight visual polish to it, but doesn't look like it's doing anything that interesting. $5.99, single player or online co-op, English and Russian full audio. Yep. Also, if I'm playing single player here, I will actually Do we have a nature card we can discard? Yes. Yeah, I can take all the time I want while playing single player, so that means this game could go on forever if I'm not careful, because I'll never have a timer limit on it. This would deal 6 damage. That's probably not a bad card to discard.
Can't make friends if you're always stone cold.
What? If this card is discarded, draw a card. Oh. I thought it was going to do 6 damage. Well, whatever. See, next we have a game on Steam called Pale Cachiexia, which looks like a visual novel. Looks like it's kind of a dark visual novel, the dark fantasy gothic thing. Might be something, or it might be nothing, which is true for so many visual novels. $5.39 English only. We'll put it on the follow list and see if people review it, but yeah, more and more. I'm probably gonna wisely move away from that. Playing any visual novels. Gonna go ahead and hit this. And hit that.
Sure, I'll help you. Sorry, I've got to take a break.
I can see the beginning of the end, but we may have a whole bunch of news. Next we have a game on Steam here called Night Squad 2, which looks like it's a player versus player top-down game. $11.99, bunch of languages, full audio for Japanese, Spain, Spanish, English, and French. Discard to do that. Do we want to wait? Or do we want to do this?
Here comes the tidal wave.
Yeah, let's go ahead and evolve that.
Get on my nerve.
My heart weighs
Hit
heavy.
that one. Didn't hit that one. Tech Raptor has a review for a game called Rain on Your Parade, which looks like a game where you play as a cardboard cutout of a cloud raining on people. Which, there might be an idea there that makes sense. This one seems to be raining down fire. They give it a 7.0. Rain on Your Parade is a clever little puzzle game that references and spoofs dozens of popular video games. Pros, fun puzzle gameplay, clever references, interesting objectives. Cons, the level quality difference and a slow beginning. Interesting that you'd give it a 7.0 and not have a more detailed review. This kind of feels like a bad review from Tech Raptor, and I've mostly enjoyed their reviews enough to not want to stop listening to them. Guess you play this.
Give birth to a new world.
That's a crazy card to play, but it does make sense.
The world cycles on.
WB Games Avalanche is looking for a lead game system software engineer, which does certainly imply that there is more WB games being made, and they aren't just immediately being shut down by the new merger with AT&T, which is a good thing. Although, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out in the next 4 years that all projects will just get canceled by WB Games and TT Games for the Lego games, or one or the other. WB Games really hasn't had a lot to offer as far as new games since the last Shadow of War game.
Nothing personal. It's justice.
Okay.
Despair or slay. Don't take this personally. All will be lost.
I shouldn't have played that, clearly.
Well, that's too bad.
Okay. Discard this card.
Can't make friends if you're always stone cold.
Give me back that card.
Ooh, I'm a fish me a sea dragon.
And then discard. Not a card. This one will evolve. So we can main that. And then we can discard this card again. That puts me in a very good position to potentially win. Tech Raptor has a mod here for Valheim called Master the Dead and the Valheim Necromancy mod, which I guess that shows that Valheim is still popular. 2 damage to an enemy. What can we do? Well, I think the best bet would be to kill this and then play this so it stops doing damage. And then we hit that. And then we hit that. And then I guess maybe you do that.
I've got to take a break.
And that.
Wind, grant them courage.
Then everything will just get buffed up. String. Here we have a game on Steam called Horatio Goes Snowboarding, which looks like it's a Frogger game, except for you're using a snowboard where there is no snow. This feels like a really ridiculous, dumb concept. Free to play, but in early access, in English, allegedly full audio. Let's see, if we do this, and then this, that works. Then we can hit that, that, and that.
Young master.
See, Tech Raptor has a video here how AI will change our game worlds, which
Told you you can't beat me.
maybe there is something interesting to that. But I bet it's actually very boring, speculative interviews / collection of interviews. I don't imagine AI really is going to change dialogue or anything like that. Dialogue trees that much in video games, because every time I've seen AI dialogue written for anything, it is incredibly insane and not obvious that it's not written by a human. So unless there's major improvements as far as syntax processing and understanding of the English language by AI, that's going to consistently be a problem. I think part of the problem there too is, while AI can do a lot of things, the way it decides to write things is by looking at the previous word that was written and moving forward from there. And sometimes it will tree back to the word before the previous words, and sometimes it may go 6 or 7 steps. But a human has to go all the way to the beginning of the entire conversation, and without being able to have cloud AI go all the way back to the conversation, which would take massive amounts of memory and hard drive space to tree to that. It creates this scenario where AIs always kind of lose the plot about what they're talking about. They sound worse than I do in most cases, where where they start talking about one thing and then they start talking about a different thing, and it just kind of naturally rambles. It's like talking to a schizophrenic person with rapid thinking more than it is talking to a normal human being. Moving on, The Verge has this article. This was retweeted by Major Nelson. You can now ask Alexa to download the Xbox Games Pass games, which doesn't mean Alexa will really download it to that device. It will simply download the games to your Xbox. But that's interesting because Alexa is the Amazon one, I believe, yeah. Not to be confused with Siri, which is the iOS one, or Google, which is the other one. I'm not going to play any card. Lol.
Brains of a man, body of a shark.
The Caves and Cliffs announcement from Minecraft is out. And they've been working on it, so that probably means it's either the update is out or it's very close to being out. Let's see, do this, I guess. I feel like Caves and Cliffs is probably a major update to Minecraft, even though it may not do as much. It may not add any real redstone or anything. It changes a lot of other things. 2-turn enemy. I'm just gonna leave that there. TechRaptor has PS5's first major update, includes a PlayStation 5 USB storage. Doesn't mean you can actually play PlayStation 5 games from a USB drive, but you can now put them in cold storage, new social features, and an app update. Which, it's nice to see them make some updates, but I think you could probably also try to make some more improvements.
Is that a let's try throwing in a dragon's claw?
At the end of the day, I think PlayStation 5 succeeds or fails just based on its game lineup, and I'm not sure its game lineup is particularly any better. 6-turn enemy follower, or can I discard something? Nope, just play that, I suppose. Let's see. TechRaptor has this article, The Troubled Release of Cooking Mama Cookstar, with a new element in that Cooking Mama Cookstar has now been removed from the Switch, and was removed from the Switch and has now appeared on the PlayStation 4. And see, they've got a paragraph here called The Truth, and I'm not sure anybody really knows the truth. The IP owner's office creates and one of the Cooking Mama Cookstarters published Planet Entertainment were feuding over release dates, is what TechRaptor says. Yeah. It's kind of ridiculous that you would have so much of a fight over such a simplistic game. This will do 1 damage to him. Am I capable of doing anything else? Yeah, let's just kill that, I suppose.
Ridiculous.
I can die happy.
Let's see. Picross S6 has been announced for Switch, due out April 22nd, according to Gamatsu, the official Picross game. Which S6 is probably the 6th version of Switch Picross game to be released. Hmm. 2 to an enemy following.
Foul forces of darkness, bow before my tempest.
Let's see. Should do 2 damage to everybody. So I'm gonna
I don't stop singing
do
until
that.
there's world peace.
Then end the turn and see what happens.
Grant them courage.
Let's get to business, shall we? I won't let you down, Dave.
Didn't realize this also gives +1/+1 to all followers.
You're going up in flames.
Let's see, Tech Raptor has Sumo Digital reveals Hood Outlaws and Legends dual sense features, which are apparently going to play a big role for Hood Outlaws and Legends, which I think is a multiplayer game. Discard a card, deal 1 random damage. Right, so if we do this, discard this, then play this, and then should get that back. And then that can basically hit that.
Get on my nerves.
That I didn't need to hit that actually. Alright, well, I've done messed this up quite a bit. Forgot that this was gonna deal 1 damage.
I live to create a draconic paradise.
Let's see, Gematsu has a game called Sumir launching May 27th, a narrative adventure game. Which looks kind of anime-ish. Does apparently have a Steam listing, so we might be able to get a little bit more of a look as to what it is. Seems like you just kind of walk around, kind of Japanese environment. It's a very soft, almost mobile phone-like animation style, but I can't immediately say, well, this is a bad animation style. It's just different. Put it on the fall list. English and Japanese. This could be a lot of things, could be nothing.
Thus, the world ends.
Do that.
Can't make friends if you're always stoned.
If I can't save myself,
Magic is a sound.
yeah. Let's go ahead and evolve this.
There's more than one way to roast an enemy.
You're awfully unkind.
So if he can do 2 damage to me, I've lost, but if I can just survive,
You're better than I thought.
I could win. But I'm actually a little surprised I got that close to a victory, considering the deck I'm using. Guess that does also kind of highlight just the ease of winning the single player games, usually. They tend to be very easy. I think we already talked about this game, 2 Leaves and a Bud. Tea Garden Simulator.
Why don't any of you get
Yeah, I just don't think I would want to play a farming simulator, even if you are doing something slightly different, such as raising and running a tea farm. Here we have a game called Wreck the Havoc, which looks like it's a platformer. It's tagged as a fighting multiplayer game. English is not supported, free, Portuguese only. Well, since English is not supported, that's an easy decision. Even though it would have been an easy decision anyways, of no. Here we have a game called Insiders, which seems like you're inside the body of somebody in their blood cells, from the looks of it, in kind of a shoot 'em up type game, space shooter. Early access, $9.74. English and Czech. Very few combinations of English and Czech as far as games. I don't think this is the kind of game I'd want to play, but I'm going to put it on the fall list just to give it a chance. It might surprise me. I doubt it will, but it might. Let's see. 4 damage. 1 damage. See. Let's see. Next we have a game called Lonely Birds, which seems to be a puzzle game. Maybe the idea is you're trying to get the puzzles back to each other in straight lines. It kind of feels a little too simplistic. You're trying to avoid the porcupines, or maybe it's okay to match the birds with the porcupines. Early access, $8.39, English only. This does have some slight polish to it, just a little bit of polish. So I'll give it a follow, but almost certainly that's not making it through the fall list, and that's true for so many games. If you discard a card... Draw a card. And then we'll take that guy out. See, next game we have is just an Asian character, so I assume that this is an Asian resource management / RPG game. It looks like a mobile game with just like a ton of text on it. Free to play. They're tagging it as an MMO with online PvP, Chinese only. Okay. 2 damage. Do I want to do that? Or let's see. This and then that.
I live to create a draconic paradise.
Well, that's a great card to have.
You get on my nerve. Dragon's reign, but obstruct me not.
I can die happy.
I live.
Let's see, next we have a game on Steam called Jurassic Fantasy, which is nothing. 59 cents, English full audio. Gain an empty play point orb. Or do this. Which I don't have more evolutions than they do now. Draw a card. Do I have something to discard?
Resplendent Phoenix graces you with her presence.
Get lost.
Let the land be graced by... I'm so beautiful.
Eden must wait.
Need to hurry up. It's been 3 hours and 30 minutes. Next we have a game on Steam called Tachyon Wars, which just looks like a space game for $22.49, English only. I can't play both of those, so I'm going to end the turn here. Let's see. Tactic Studios is hiring a senior gameplay programmer for a remote location, according to Gamma Sutra's job listings. I think we may have already talked about this, but the GLAAD Awards, both Tell Me Why and Last of Us, for its LGBTQ rep. Arguably, both of those could have had better writing in general, and I imagine the representation, which is I assume what they mean by rep and not reputation, could have been better. I guess it always can be better. That might be a very subjective thing. well, get rid of that.
Show you the power of the shark.
And then
You got a death
evolve.
wish or something? Something's not. Let me
Hit
free.
that.
I can die happy.
Here we have a game called Hobo Tough Life,
Really gonna be special.
which is it a game where you literally play as a hobo? Plus, hobo stands for homeward bound and originally meant migrant workers, but I think nowadays it pretty much means homeless or bum, which bum is a little too offensive. $24.99 seems way too expensive for this game. Full audio in a bunch of languages seems suspect. Also, it feels like it's probably an asset flip game, but it does look fairly pretty. That being said, I think there's more I would want to a story than the fact that somebody is homeless. I would want a name of a character that, a reason why the character is homeless, something along those lines that would make me want to relate to them and feel like I'm, let's see, I can evolve next turn, good. So then it really just comes down to, do we want to hit this? I think probably yes. And that does just kind of feel like a troll game. Next we have a game on Steam here called Smash Legends, which feels like it's going for name confusion with Smash Brothers as a series. But it looks to me like it is a hack and slash game. This is from Line Games, which is the Japanese games publisher that got in trouble for leaking informations. They were the publisher of Destiny Child for the first year, and they were pretty greedy too. This is free to play online PvP, so I guess check it out if it interests you, but since it's free, I don't really have a reason to cover it.
Nothing personal. It's just
Let's do this.
Ridiculous.
don't take this personally.
There we go. That was a change of fate. And then finally we have Kung Fu Kickball, which doesn't look like anything. Early access, $17.99 English full audio. Alright, so that puts me done with all the things that were open. So now it's just a matter of, is there something new to... This would have Storm of 4, so I can just play this and win.
Don't take this
My
personal.
wings.
There we go. So now I need to just go down my Twitter feed and see if there's anything new that really needs to be talked about. And we'll try and see if we can skip through some text sections. There's almost certainly one more single player game that needs to be done, if not 2 or 3. Yeah, immediately there's another game there. So I can't make it through the rest of that today. But we did make some progress, and that's nice. And through making progress, we got some gold. So we're a little bit better than what we were to begin with. Let's see, now I'm just scrolling down my Twitter feed and trying to see if anything new is... Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals is announced as coming to the Switch this year. A game called Skull, SKUL, The Hero Slayers head to Switch. It's a 2D roguelike out this summer. coming to Switch, as well as a game called Art of Rally, Kiwi, Keywe, Labyrinth City, Waving Tides, The House of the Dead Remake, Ender Lilies, Beast of Maravilla Island, Maravill, and Fez is out today. Which, okay. It's kind of weird for Fez to come out when I think the developer of Fez in general kind of said he hated gamers and abandoned the property. Like, I'm surprised Fez is even available for sale, unless I'm misremembering that situation. Like, he was, I think, kind of violently reactive to some Gamergate or something, and people were upset with his game taking so long, and they were so hyped about it. But I'd also say Fez has some problems as a game. It's not very polished. It's intentionally obtuse, and it has some lack of replayability or even original playability nowadays, because it's so easy to just look at the solutions to all the puzzles, and then a lot of the solutions of the puzzles are not particularly good. They don't feel natural, like you would have ever actually figured out what the puzzles were. They feel like that it would have taken you 60 hours plus to figure out what one solution was, and you probably would have never figured it out. And then there's also some platforming elements in Fez that are major difficulty spikes, which then also becomes an issue. Fez is another one of those games that gets so hyped up by the mainstream video game journalists, and I was definitely listening to those types of journalists way too much when Fez came out, that when the time actually came for me to play it, I was very disappointed. Looking at the Humble Bundle, there's no new Humble Bundles. So I have a game here called Monkey vs. Dino, which is a low effort fighting game for $9.99. The concept's not bad, the implementation is awful. Here we have a game on Steam called Bloxplode, which looks like a Bloom Blocks physics game, or a 3D Angry Birds type game. $13.49 English full audio. I'll give it a chance. It might be good. It's probably not. And then we have Hidden Shapes Animals Jigsaw Puzzle, which is pretty much not going to be anything. 99 cents. And so, as far as announcements, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is confirmed for the Switch, and it has a gameplay trailer. So they've got some gameplay footage. Yeah, it definitely looks like a new version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The House of the Dead remakes confirmed for Switch. Now this isn't Typing of the Dead per se, so they're gonna remake the actual light gun game, and I assume that they're gonna remake it correctly, so it isn't just a joke experience. I have wondered whether you could actually have light gun games on the Switch and it actually work like the Wii, or if those motions were completely just undoable. If you were to take a game like this and release it on PC, that might push me to buy a light gun, which would be very, very expensive. So without doing that, you're gonna definitely have to potentially use a mouse or a controller, and then that's not going to feel right at all. Ollie Ollie World has been announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. This is a skating game. I feel like there were other games called Ollie Ollie that I don't know actually were skating related. These are just stationary images and a lot of lack of gameplay. This looks cool. Like, it looks like a more cartoony skating game, whereas most skating games have tried to go hyper realistic. I think it's a little weird that the character has a broken arm in the cast, but that is kind of realistic too. It might boil down to just being an infinite runner. Maybe I should go back and check some of the Ollie Ollie games. Let's see, Konami announces a roguelike hack and slash action game called Getsu Fumadin Undying Moon, which it's age restricted on that video. So it's due out for early access on PC first. So that might be interesting. Definitely looks like an old school horror Japanese demons and monsters, which you don't see too much of that these days. Almost all anime has the moe or chibi art style, and if there is a demon, it's just a cute anime girl taking the role of the demon. Here we have a game called Chris Tales, launching July 20th, which is an RPG. Looks interesting. Back to the anime girls, though, with the art styles. What kind of game is it, though? It seems like it's the past and the future are combined, and maybe you do some kind of RPG puzzles to affect the past and the future. I don't know if that really changes the game much, or if that just is a storyline gimmick. It's from Modius Games and Dreams Incorporated. There might be something there. It's a different twist. Oxenfree 2 Lost Signals announced for Switch. It's kind of hard to really want to see an Oxenfree 2, considering how Oxenfree 1, if you get the right ending, ends the circles and cycles that happen there. And Oxenfree 1 isn't particularly a great game. It seems like in part it's a horror game at times, but a lot of times it's also just a weird walking simulator game. It didn't really feel like it was anything. It had a few events that makes it feel like it would have been a lot better as just a linear experience game, where you were more zoomed in and looking at the characters and seeing their reaction and their fear, and it just being a horror game that way. Yeah, I definitely didn't really like Oxenfree, so I don't think I'd bother to play a sequel. Action adventure game Aztec Forgotten Gods announced for the PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, which looks interesting. I wonder if it's a fighting game or a MOBA, though, because that could really just be a cutscene. Seems like it might be maybe a boss rush fighting game with giant monsters. It might be very similar to Azura's Wrath. See, massive bosses. Yeah. Or it might be close to the game Fury, which is a little bit more modern than Azura's Wrath. Fez is now available for Switch for $14.99 by Polytron Corporation. I imagine there's really just a corporation that owns Fez that still sells it, but the actual developer has no interest in it. Phil Fish, I believe, was the developer, and I think you could probably go look up Phil Fish controversy in Google and figure out all the things around him, which there's plenty of controversies on a lot of developers. Ender Lilies Quietest of the Nights launches June 22nd on Switch and PC, July 6th on PS4, and later for Xbox Series and Xbox One. This looks like this is a visual novel, but I guess it's not. It's more of a platformer game. Well, it looks interesting. A little dark aesthetic fighting game. So, let's see that Steam page. Do I have it on the following list? Yes, I do. It's already early access. It's already overwhelmingly positive. So we're just waiting for it to come out for real. Here we have a game called The Longing, now available for Switch. Apparently it was already on Steam. I don't recognize this as a game. It looks like it is a kind of point and click adventure game. Looks like it might be particularly boring as a game. But they are rating it very positive on Steam, and it is on my wish list, so I did see this at some point. I just kind of forgot about it, which happens when you look at so many games as I do. The point-and-click adventure game There Is No Game, Wrong Dimension is now available for Switch, which I think is probably a sequel to There Is No Game. I think PewDiePie covered this game. I'm not watching much of PewDiePie's content either. Yep. There's No Game, Wrong Dimension. Oh yeah, I remember this. Why is that not on the wish list? And then you should play the free original version of the game too. Yeah, that's a couple of games that make a lot of sense. Here we have the game Kiwi, which seems to be actually a kiwi that you play as. Interesting. No video there. Okay, well that's interesting. Then we have Art of Rally coming to the Switch this summer, which that's a rally car racing, which I think we had already seen that earlier today on Steam. And then the narrative exploration game Hindsight announced for the Switch and PC. Do we have a video of this? Yep. It feels a lot like that game about the baby with cancer, because that basically had no eyes too. What was that? I want to think it was like Danger Here Be Dragons or something like that, or just Here Be Dragons was the name of that game. And then the creator of that game said, well, this was supposed to be an artistic piece and we don't want any criticism on it as a video game. And I'm like, well, kind of too bad, but also I have no interest in promoting your game if you are potentially going to DMCA people for covering your game. But it's also ridiculous for you to sell a product using your life experiences and then claim other people are using your life experiences in an unethical way when you've already sold it yourself. It's kind of the moral right of first sale versus a moral right of second sale, which nobody has a right of second sale in the law. So yeah, if you had something horrible and your child had cancer and somebody else made a story about it, then I could see somebody saying, well, I have the moral rights to that story and I don't want it out there and I don't want it told. But the second you sell it, you've put it out in the public domain, and at that point it becomes a object of discussion to all the public, and that includes criticism. And so you have no rights to it at that point as far as whether people are going to criticize your game or not. And it's not like a lot of people were even criticizing that game particularly badly. It didn't look great, but it wasn't terrible. Moving on, TechRaptor has an article. Perfect World is making a Torchlight mobile game, which is just yet another example of Torchlight being completely ransacked and sold and manipulated by Perfect World, instead of it being a really good series that should stick to what it's good at. But we already knew that as far as like Torchlight 3, whatever actually came out from the Torchlight 3 project, because that was pretty awful too. A game called General's Positional War also came out on Steam, and that's nothing. $10.55, English and Russian. Laughable. Laughable expense. Alright. Well, the Indie Showcase didn't have as many new announcements as I thought it might have, which means we are caught up on my Twitter feed, and as far as news, we are also caught up, relatively speaking, as far as daily quests, although new daily missions start in 20 minutes, and I don't think I'll spend any time on that. So that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want a friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.